Good morning, it's 7 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophy and Wilf, good morning from me as well. Thanks for being with us today.
Donald Trump demands help from the UK and other countries to protect the Strait of Hormuz.
Israel strikes Lebanon overnight as its military confirms limited, they're calling, operations against Hezbollah in South Lebanon.
Most Dubai flights are suspended after a drone hit a fuel tank near the airport.
2 people have died and 11 are seriously ill after an outbreak of a rare form of meningitis at Kent University.
I'll be live here at the Elton John Oscar party as Hollywood celebrates Jessie Buckley's big win.
Good morning. The war in Iran is now entering its 3rd week and the situation on the ground is dire and worsening. The conflict's being felt across the region. Missile and drones were shot down over the UAE last night, but the focus for the US is the Strait of Hormuz, that crucial shipping route.
Donald Trump is calling for, in fact, he uses the word demanding, at least 7 countries, including the UK, to come and help him protect the strait from Iranian attacks. None of the 7 have so far answered his call. The US president warns NATO faces a very bad future if allies don't help.
Well, here he is, speaking on Air Force One.
It only takes a couple of people to screw up the strait, a couple of terrorists. You don't need their military is defeated, but all you need is a few people dropping mines here and there, and you louse it up. So we need. I'm demanding that these countries come in and protect their own territory because it is their territory. It's the place from which they get their energy, and they should come and they should help us protect it.
Well, we'll speak to Sally Lockwood in Dubai now. Sally, just give us the latest on the... apologies. Just give us the latest, shall we, on the air attacks that we've seen in Dubai. What's the latest with the flights there?
Yeah, morning to you, Sophie. It has actually been quite a significant night here in the UAE. Dubai International Airport was hit in a drone attack once again. This time it hit a fuel tank at the airport, which resulted in a very large fire. I've received messages from eyewitnesses, one resident who was woken at around 3:30 in the morning by a really loud bang, and he said he watched what he described as an inferno for around 4 hours before hearing another loud blast around 5 a.m. And there was a passenger who was on her way to the airport to catch a flight back to Glasgow who contacted me as well, who said, all the roads are closed around the airport. I don't know what's going on, but I've just heard another really loud bang, and that was around 5 a.m. as well. We now know from the UAE officials that there was a drone strike on the airport in a fuel tank. It's resulted in a large fire, which they say is now under control, but it has resulted in enormous disruption because flights were cancelled, the airport was closed temporarily, flights were turned around mid-air and sent back to Dublin, London and Edinburgh, as we've seen on flight radar. And we've been told in the last hour that flights are going to start resuming from 10 a.m. this morning, which is an hour ago, but we haven't seen anything take off yet. But certainly it just underlines how much Iran is targeting critical infrastructure, critical domestic infrastructure here in the UAE. We've seen ports targeted. We've heard threats against the financial centre as well and the airport, which is crucial to the UAE economy and also to global travel. It's the busiest airport hub in the world, and it's now been hit 3 times that we're aware of.
Sally, really interesting update that on Dubai, and I do wonder the extent to which it's changing various expats' sort of perspective there of their desire to be there long term or not. What about the broader region and what we've seen in the last 24 hours? There's a huge amount of action and announcements late Friday, but has it been a bit calmer since then or not?
Yeah. I mean, It's a mixed bag in terms of reaction, I should say, Wilf, just to nod to your point there about how people are feeling. Some people still feel very safe, feel very comfortable, don't want to ever leave here, really love their life here. But there have been a lot of people who've evacuated, especially in the last week, over concern that this situation could get worse. Because, of course, we are hearing a lot of rhetoric and a lot of signalling from both sides that this could escalate further. You know, the comments that we've been hearing from Washington, but also from Tehran. Saudi overnight has intercepted more than 60 drones already since midnight, if I'm not mistaken, and the airport in Baghdad has been targeted once again, resulting in 5 people injured. We haven't actually had any incidents in the Strait of Hormuz that we're aware of yet. We're still awaiting official updates there, but of course that remains a huge focus point for this region and for the world, because commercial shipping is still at a standstill in the Strait of Hormuz. And of course, Donald Trump has said he's trying to get this coalition of countries together to come and help police the Strait of Hormuz. Well, so far we've heard from one country, Australia, who've said they're not sending a warship here. And I think, you know, whatever plans Donald Trump is trying to pull together are going to take time. And in the meantime, the global economy is really feeling the impact of this. And here in the UAE, I think there is a lot of concern that Tehran came out and accused the UAE of essentially allowing US strikes on Karg Island over the weekend to come from UAE territory, which the UAE has flatly denied, but Tehran is making all sorts of threats to target ports and infrastructure here, which is causing a lot of concern. And of course, we've seen the airport hit already once again this morning.
Sally, great stuff. Thanks so much for that. Let's talk about the economic impact of all of this quickly, the market impact. As Sally just outlined, clearly everything continues as it has been for the last couple of weeks this morning and over the weekend. Here's the oil price for you. As the title says, over $100 a barrel. Brent oil, the international gauge, is actually just shy of $105 a barrel today. So it's up again, up, you might say, only 1.5%. Quite often on Monday mornings after markets have been shut for the weekend, we've seen massive jumps. And as Sally was outlining there's still been a lot of conflict, a lot of explosions, a lot of military action over the course of the weekend. And it's only increased an extra 1.5%. But late last week, of course, we did see a big surge. Normal theme now has been big surge, a little bit of a pullback, and late last week another surge, and that slight extra increment that we're seeing today. The shape of the reaction in UK borrowing costs has been kind of similar. Let's have a look at the UK 2-year borrowing costs. We surged since the start of the war. This time last week, we were talking about that big surge. We did pare that back a little bit during the course of last week. But Friday, and so we haven't opened yet for the bond market so far this morning, we did see those borrowing costs pick up again. Just a reminder of the scale of this. The Bank of England base rate is 3.75%. Our 2-year borrowing cost is now higher than that. So you are once again looking at the market sort of say, well, we definitely don't expect a rate cut. The next Bank of England meeting is on the 19th of March. We even possibly wonder if there'll need to be a rate hike. Now, just remember the shape of these two charts that we've just seen, both the oil price chart and this UK borrowing cost chart. Incredibly sharp, big moves in just the last 2 weeks since the war broke out. I now just want to show you a 5-year chart of the stock market. We're using the MSCI World, so this is sort of global stocks all put in a pile together. We haven't seen that much of a sell-off. This MSCI World chart since the start of March is down just less than 5%. If you looked, by the way, at US markets, they're down less than that. The S&P 500 is only down 3.5% in the month of March. So what the stock market is sort of telling you is that those massive moves we've seen in oil prices will be temporary. The stock market is sort of saying, we think this war will calm down soon. Will it be right? We'll see. Do the military experts think they're right? We'll see. But at the moment, there is a disconnect in the scale of move you've seen up in oil prices and down in stocks, not that big a move. And Sophie, I do think, by the way, the fact that US stocks aren't down that much is another factor that will prevent the president and his advisors from thinking we need to change our course just yet. Of course, the US is a net energy exporter, so it has less of an effect on them than it does on many countries like us.
Yeah, including the UK, of course, because one country that is certainly being affected by this and will continue to be if it takes on for a long time is the United Kingdom. We're going to hear from the Prime Minister later this morning, but we can bring in Alex Rogers, our political correspondent, to talk about it a bit more. So the Prime Minister is giving a speech I guess all eyes are going to be on what he says about the cost of living.
Yeah, we're expecting him to announce sort of emergency support for households that use heating oil. That's often rural households. We know that Northern Ireland, lots of households in Northern Ireland rely on that too. And the cost of that has shot up by about 80% in a week or so. And they're not protected by the energy price cap. So it's expected that he's going to put his focus on this and keep it on the cost of living, despite Donald Trump saying, can you please send warships over to the Strait of Hormuz, which we are not doing at the moment. Instead, we might just be sending kind of anti-drone technology, that kind of thing. So I think we'll hear a lot about the cost of living. I think we may also hear Keir Starmer being quite defiant about why he's taking the right approach and why he's not going to get dragged into this war in the way that Donald Trump wants.
They did have a call yesterday, we understand?
Yes, they had a phone call where the Strait of Hormuz and the importance of reopening that was a strong feature. But I think we can kind of draw from the fact that we've not done what he's that Trump wants, that there is a bit of a disconnect over that.
Yeah.
I was going to say as well, the conversation I had last week with the Treasury Secretary, I gave him 3 or 4 chances to slam Keir Starmer. And he didn't take the bait. In fact, he said we want to get the relationship back on track. And I did think that was interesting. I thought, based on comments we saw from President Trump sort of 10 days ago now, nearly 2 weeks ago now, that they'd be coming ready to criticise the special relationship. But clearly there's been some attempt to try and get things back on track. I think the latest comments, as you were pointing to earlier, Sophie, overnight, that President Trump has made towards NATO, make you wonder whether the pendulum of the direction of travel of his comments towards allies is going to swing again.
Yeah, I was interested about, the conversation you were having with the US Treasury Secretary about Russia as well, because it does feel like this is another big part of it, right? Donald Trump even saying, look, we helped these European countries with Ukraine, you didn't have to. Did you get a sense that, Russia is going to be, I guess, one of the beneficiaries of all this?
Obviously, late last week, they suspended sanctions as well, again, on purchase of Russian oil that's already at sea. That was the way they framed it, for 30 days. The US Treasury Secretary on that said it's inevitable that they'll benefit, and I think that's a very sort of investor, he was a famous investor before he was Treasury Secretary, and a very economic, markets-based mind saying, well, that's, like the US, a country that has fossil fuels under the ground, so inevitable, when the price goes up, they'll benefit. I said, is it a shame that they are? And he did say that it was disappointing, but without like a depth of saying it's something that's going to change our opinion. And I think you see their hierarchy. They're totally committed to carrying things out in Iran. They do care about the impact on oil prices, and they announce things to try and offset it a bit. Ukraine comes third in the list.
Yeah. The use of that word inevitable as well, it almost kind of expels any sense of responsibility from them as well. Oh, it's inevitable, as in, yeah, but it's also about actions and what you are deciding to do in the circumstance as well. Alex, thanks so much. I'm sure you'll have a busy day following that Keir Starmer speech. When it happens later on, we'll, of course, bring you that on Sky News as well.
2 people have died and 11 are seriously ill in hospital after an outbreak of meningitis at the University of Kent.
So the UK Health Security Agency has provided antibiotics to some students in the Canterbury area because it has detected these cases of a very rare form of the disease. We can talk now to Emma Birchley, who's at the University of Kent. Emma, what can you tell us?
Yes, so this is an outbreak of invasive meningococcal disease, so it's bacterial, and it can cause meningitis and also septicemia. And what is a real concern is that the symptoms can come on very, very quickly and cause very serious illness and indeed fatality. And we know that 2 people believed to be aged between 17 and 21 have died. Now, the University of Kent have confirmed that one of those people is a student. The other is thought possibly to be a 6th former in the area, and there have been links to a social event, a night out, club chemistry in Canterbury, the club putting on social media the advice which has been shared to make sure that you look out for symptoms and that you get antibiotics as quickly as possible, because that is the main advice. If you see any symptoms, symptoms, or if you're a close contact of anyone who's known to have had this, to make sure that you get antibiotics. And actually the UK Health Security Agency and the NHS have identified the people they think are close contacts, but anyone else is being advised to come here to the University of Kent today, to the Senate building, to get antibiotics if they're a student, if they see any symptoms, to call 999 or go to A&E. And those symptoms, just to be clear, are quite confusing because they can be similar to flu or even a hangover, and we're talking about students here, of course, because it's fever, headache, dizziness, it can be confusion, vomiting, but also things like breathlessness or fast breathing, blotchy skin. And one of the things we always talk about with meningitis is the rash, where if you roll a glass over that rash, it doesn't disappear. So the advice being to seek help if those symptoms are spotted. And actually, if you know someone, someone in your halls of residence is in the next room, you know they're poorly, it's to keep checking on them, because the advice is that that could save their life.
Emma, thanks so much. We'll be back out to further updates throughout the morning.
Yeah, it's worth saying as well that there are some vaccines you can take against meningitis, particularly for your kids, but also if you're a student as well. It's quite interesting because there has been, it feels like a little bit of a, I guess, reluctance by some to take vaccines. We've seen this outbreak of measles in North London as well, in Enfield, where all the authorities are saying that the herd immunity that's needed to keep kids safe has not been met.
More to come on that throughout the day. Now, Irish President Catherine Connolly has released a poignant message ahead of St Patrick's Day.
She was talking about the rich culture of Ireland and Irish people across the world, and for the first time she also addressed the war in the Middle East. Let's take a look. In a moment.
Patrick's story invites us to respond with hospitality and kindness to those suffering the consequences of war and displacement, those fleeing their countries because of persecution or violence. The normalisation of war can never be accepted. Now more than ever, we must renew our commitment to peace and diplomacy in line with the principles of international law as set out in the United Nations Charter.
Well, we're talking an awful lot about Iran, about the cost of living, but the government's also got a pretty big announcement today about youth unemployment, which, of course, has been really ticking up. 16% unemployment now among 16 to 24-year-olds. We can speak now to Pat McFadden, the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, who is out and about today promoting this. So you're looking at helping young people get into apprenticeships. It comes at a time, of course, when youth unemployment is the highest it's been in a decade. So what are you doing and how worried are you about the programme, about the problem?
Well, I'm very worried about the problem because it's been going on for a long time. In fact, youth employment has never reached the levels it was before the financial crash at any time in the last 15 years. And between 2021 and 2024, the number of young people not in education, employment or training went up by about 250,000. So we've got a long-term problem here, but up until now, we haven't had enough action to deal with it. So I'm announcing three main things today. One is a hiring bonus for businesses who will take on a young person who's been out of work for 6 months, and we'll give them a hiring bonus of £3,000 if they do that. The second is changes to the apprenticeship system, where we will give small and medium-sized businesses a bonus of £2,000 if they take on a young apprentice. In fact, if it's a young person who's been out of work for 6 months, they could get both of those things. And the third thing, for the long-term young unemployed, is we're expanding an existing offer of training in a subsidised job after 18 months out of work to people right up to the age of 24. And the message uniting all three of these things is that we want to back Britain's young people. They're in a difficult labour market. It's been a difficult labour market for them for some time. But with these actions, we want to tell young people and to the businesses thinking of hiring them that We've got to create a better future for young people. We cannot have 1 million young people not in education, employment or training. It's not good for them. It's not good for the country either.
You're very careful there to say that it's been a long-term problem, that's been an issue for some time. I'm not disputing that, but it is pretty clear that it's got worse recently. And I'm just wondering if you accept that partly that is because of the changes that this government has made. I'm thinking particularly about raising employer national insurance contributions, making it more expensive to take on staff. Tom Kerridge, for example, the guy that you're launching this with, told me last year that that policy was catastrophic. Hugh Pill, the chief economist at the Bank of England, told the Treasury Select Committee that the changes around A, the national living wage, and B, the changes to insurance, national insurance, both of those have had a particular effect on young people, and it's been particularly acute. Do you accept that part of what the government has done since coming into power has made the problem of youth unemployment worse?
Well, there's actually an existing tax break where employers don't have to pay any national insurance contributions at all if they take on someone under the age of 21. With regard to the minimum wage, we think it's important that people are paid decently for the job that they do. Our party introduced the minimum wage in the first place. But of course, in any particular year, it's for the Low Pay Commission to decide the rate. And they do that taking into account a whole range of economic factors, including the employment conditions in the Labour Party.
So just
to be honest,
if I may, do you disagree then with the chief economist at the Bank of England who says that this government's actions have had a particular effect on young people's employment? He's wrong.
I think it's a longer-term issue. And I think we've got to face up to it as a longer-term issue, and that's what we're doing today. And the moves that we've announced today have been described by the Federation of Small Business as a game changer, a decisive move forward. And Tom Kerridge, who you referred to there, who has been critical of us in the past, has warmly welcomed what we are announcing today. I think we're dealing with a generation of young people who need hope and who need better prospects. And the problem up until now, in the many years of the challenging labour market that they've faced, is there haven't been programmes in place to help them. I want to change that. I see this as a pro-young people agenda, a pro-opportunity agenda, and I also see it as welfare reform, which too often is discussed simply in terms of which benefits you want to cut and not enough in terms of what opportunities you want to create. I want to change that with the announcements I'm making today and the speech that I'm making today from here at Waltham Forest College.
Can I talk to you a little bit about Iran, if I may? Donald Trump has called on allies, including Britain, to help protect the Strait of Hormuz. Reports are we're resisting sending warships, but are considering sending mine-hunting ships and anti-drone weapons. I just wondered if you might be able to clarify exactly what our involvement is going to be.
Well, the Prime Minister and the President spoke last night. Of course, everyone is concerned about the situation in the Straits of Hormuz and the wider effect of this war on energy prices. But it's also important to remember that we have not sought to be a protagonist in this war. The Prime Minister was clear about that from the very beginning a few weeks ago. So we're in constant dialogue with the United States and with other allies, but we haven't sought to be a protagonist in this war.
I'm just going to jump in again, if I may. It's always hard when you're, speaking different locations, but just wanted to steer back to the question. If you could clarify, maybe you can't, but if you could clarify what we're doing in the Strait of Hormuz. Are we sending warships? Are we sending anti-drone weapons? What is our involvement going to be?
Look, I'm not trying to duck your question, but the honest answer is these things will be discussed between the Prime Minister and the President, and I can't give you a list of equipment at the moment that we would send. But the position that we've taken more broadly in the war, as I said, is we've not sought to be a protagonist in this, and everything that we do on equipment or in discussions with the United States or allies will always be about the British national interest, what's best for this country and what's best for our citizens who are facing consequences from this war, particularly in terms of rising energy prices.
Donald Trump said that if other countries don't help in sending these ships, it could be very bad for the future of NATO. He then said we didn't have to help them with Ukraine. Ukraine's thousands of miles away from us, but we helped them. Now we'll see if they help us. I'm not sure that they're going to be there for us. Are you worried that Donald Trump could stop supporting NATO, could stop funding NATO if other countries don't do what he wants when it comes to Iran?
Well, that's the president right there. The quote that you've just given has summed him up. It's a very transactional presidency, and our job is to navigate this, to always remember that the friendship between the United States and the United Kingdom runs very deep. It's a good relationship, it's enduring, and I think it will outlast all the personalities involved.
Well, yeah, fingers crossed. I mean, he's also saying, obviously, that the US didn't have to help Europe with Ukraine. Are you worried that the one person who might end up benefiting from the war with Iran could be Vladimir Putin?
Well, I think that is a concern. And when energy prices go up and the oil price goes up the way it has done in the last couple of weeks, that, of course, gives more revenue to Vladimir Putin. So I do think all of these things have to be taken into account. And the best way to get the energy price back down is, of course, for this war to come to an end as soon as possible.
OK, Pat McFadden, thank you very much indeed. Pat McFadden speaking to us there from East London with his announcement on apprenticeships.
That was quite critical of President Trump, describing his as transactional. I mean, it could go further than that, of course they could, but you don't usually hear that from senior government members. Yeah,
well, I mean, I guess, you know, if you look at his words when he's saying, you know, we didn't have to help them with Ukraine, when he's talking about things would be very bad for the future of NATO, it's pretty kind of antagonistic, I guess, as well, towards European governments.
Very interesting. We will be discussing the war, of course, in more detail to come. Michael Clark joins us shortly, and we'll also be discussing to a leading Iranian rights activist later on in the programme, amongst other details. We'll be right back.
The cameras are poised here, there, everywhere.
The day those present would never forget.
First question, Sky News.
Do you hate the thought of losing to him?
I hate the thought of losing to anyone.
Historic day here today.
They are pushing forward.
They dashed to the water.
Wait, what country are you
from? The UK.
Why don't you go back to your country?
Huge questions to be grappled with.
That is totally unprecedented. Been quite some day.
Let me start with breaking news.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Welcome back. A-listers hit the red carpet last night to celebrate the best in the business of this year's Academy Awards. Sinners and One Battle After Another had the biggest wins of the night, with the latter coming away with Best Picture. Our arts and entertainment correspondent, Katie Spencer, has the full report.
Jessie Buckley.
It might have been the most predictable win of the night, but that didn't make the moment any less emotional for Jessie Buckley.
This is... this is really something.
History-making as the first ever Irish star to win for Best Actress for her role in Hamnet. Sinner's Michael B. Jordan similarly overwhelmed by his Best Actor win.
Oh, man, y'all. I stand here because of the people that came before me.
A poignant moment provided by Sinner's cinematography, Autumn Gerald Arkapow, the first woman ever to triumph in that category.
I really want all the women in the room to stand up, because I feel like I don't get here without you guys.
One Battle After Another was the big winner, with 6. Filmmaker Paul Thomas Anderson going from having no Oscars to taking home more than he could carry, including for his writing and direction.
I wrote this movie for my kids to say sorry for the housekeeping mess that we left in this world we're handing off to them, but also with the encouragement that they will be the generation that hopefully brings us some common sense and decency.
This was a political and punchy Academy Awards, from Jimmy Kimmel's joke about press censorship.
As you know, there are some countries whose leaders don't support free speech. I'm not at liberty to say which. Let's just leave it at North Korea and CBS.
To Javier Bardem striding on to make a statement.
No to war and free Palestine.
While there was no win for Timothée Chalamet, there were veiled references to his controversial criticism of the arts.
I'm told there's concerns about attacks from both the opera and ballet communities.
K-pop Demon Hunters rounded off its record-breaking run as Netflix's most-watched film ever with 2 golden statuettes. British actors went home empty-handed, but Mike Hill's makeup for Frankenstein meant we had a winner from Warrington.
My mate Jacob Elordi, who sat for 400 hours in the makeup chair during filming.
One Battle's Best Picture win, solidifying its successful award season.
What a night. You guys, let's have a martini. This is pretty amazing. Cheers. Thank you very much.
Stiff drinks perhaps needed to get through celebrations during such chaotic times.
Katie joins us now, I'm delighted to say. And Katie, I have to say, I wondered whether it would be more political than this. And as you kind of alluded to there in the closing section, the night was able to go on despite the extraordinary world that we're living in at the moment.
Yeah, look, I have to say, throughout this award season, we've had a lot of ceremonies which have been really missing anything of any real meaning being said. But we didn't have that for the Oscars tonight. There were a lot of big wins and a lot of political statements, really. Look, Donald Trump wasn't mentioned by name, but the culture wars and the actual wars that have occurred during his second term of office were. But there's also plenty to celebrate. I have here at the Elton John party, we've had 2 Oscar winners that have allowed me to hold their Oscars. Sure, they were both for the visual effects team for Avatar, but they're my new best friends now. Richard Bainham was one of the people that came past here and had a chat to me. Shall we have a listen to what he had to say?
it's a lovely thing to receive, and on behalf of a very, very large team. The one I won for the last one, the one we won for the last one, is still on tour. Our crew, checking in with my assistant Angelina, who is the life and soul of what we do. They take it for a weekend, and the price of it is they have to send photos. So there's thousands of photos of people and their families taking photos, and that is the value of a trophy.
Well, the trophy looked fantastic. I'm glad you got to hold it as well, Katie. And on some of the biggest awards of the night, is it fair to say that it's quite rare for a kind of action-type movie like One Battle After Another, I guess Sinners is in that category as well, to take away these big awards, and so many of them?
I don't know if rare is the right way to put it, but look, certainly One Battle, there is no denying the fact that it is a ready-made classic, if you like. Paul Thomas Anderson has been due an Oscar win, really, throughout his career, and it wasn't until tonight where he got handfuls of Oscars delivered to him. Yeah, look, I think it's a big film, but we've had some big Oscar winners over the years, and I think this certainly deserves to be up there. Can I just say, Wilfred and Sophie, such is our commitment to staying up to give you this live in the morning. If we just turn the camera around, are there any other photographers? Are there any other journalists? Are there any camera crews left on this carpet with us? No. And they've switched the music off inside, and we didn't even get to go in.
I love that, Katie. And I would throw you another question, but I almost feel like we mustn't, and we must let you go. If they turn the music off, hopefully there is one bottle of champagne still kicking around that you can quickly steal to take home with you.
There's a wall of security men that are blocking our way, so I'm not sure, unless my cameraman Paul fancies sort of burying through underneath their legs, I'm not sure we stand much of a chance, but well, you never know, we could give it a go.
Katie, you look like a film star, so they'll let you straight through. Go for it. Have a great morning, not evening, and thank you for joining us. Katie Spencer there with all of the key stories coming from last night's Oscars, more to come later in the programme. Now, Jewish students are reporting a rise in anti-Semitism at universities across the country. 49% of students say they've seen Hamas and Hezbollah glorified on campus, according to new figures from the Union of Jewish Students. For more, I'm joined by Lord Finkelstein, a columnist at the Jewish Chronicle, The Times, a former senior advisor to David Cameron. Very good to see you, Danny. Thanks so much for joining us. Just tell us a bit more about this survey and what strikes you from it.
Well, it's a whole range of things that the UJS, the Union of Jewish Students, have reported on from campus, ranging from people being uncomfortable about having a Jew in their flat share, 1 in 5 people, from lots of stories from Jewish students who have experienced being heckled or being intimidated or being told they're not wanted on the basis either of an actual view that Israel should exist or an imagined view that Israel should exist. And overall, I think everybody in the Jewish community has become aware of how hard it is for young Jewish students at university to live a free and open Jewish life. And that maybe because they want to express their identity in terms of believing that there needs to be a homeland for Jews somewhere in the world, or it may be because they're just Jewish and people associate them with something that they think is wrong. I must emphasize this. It is not anti-Semitic to disapprove of the policy of the government of Israel. Lots of people who live in Israel disapprove of the policy of the government of Israel. But it is anti-Semitic to hold every Jew in Britain responsible for the policies of the government of Israel, or to assume that because Jews do want a homeland in somewhere in the world, that makes them evil, genocidal baby killers. That is anti-Semitic, and it's making life very uncomfortable for lots of young Jewish people in universities.
How do you try and correct that and separate those two issues going forward?
Well, because everyone is correctly in this country concerned about free speech and the expression of opinion, and because it's perfectly legitimate to criticise the government of Israel, I think sometimes university authorities and others are insufficiently aware of where the line is between that kind of legitimate political protest and intimidation of individuals because they don't share the view of the majority of students on particular political topics. And this has then channeled itself in this particular form of dislike of Jews, the spread of anti-Semitic ideas. And what authorities often do when they're presented with examples of this is they don't appreciate how oppressive it is and how difficult it is for Jews. So the most important thing about this report isn't any specific, recommendation about what you might do with the Prevent programme or what universities might do with their regulations. It's trying to alert people who run academic or other public institutions, really, that nobody is saying, or people should not say, that it is not allowed to criticise what the government of Israel is doing, but you have to be able to distinguish between that and the intimidation and isolation and heckling of Jewish students.
If I may, Danny, I just wanted to pivot the conversation. And as I said in the intro, obviously you were senior in David Cameron's team. How do you think Keir Starmer's handled dealing with this latest crisis in the Middle East and specifically dealing with President Trump in and around it?
It's really, really hard for him. Let's start with that, because I think most people in this country, and I share this view, think this wasn't a thought-through war and that the government, the United States president, doesn't have a clear objective, even though it does seem as though there are certain things that you would want to achieve, like Iran not having nuclear weapons, not having ballistic weapons, and indeed, if you could, regime change. But it's very, very difficult to achieve those things. At the same time, my own view is that two things. First of all, we are we are America's ally to tell the United States they can't use the bases that they also use to protect us, I think is really problematic in terms of our long-term relationship. And secondly, now that this has been started, whether or not it was started on terms that we would like, do we want the regime in Iran to fall? I certainly would. Which side are we on? Iran's enemies or its allies? And if we can't make that decision, I think this country isn't sort of being led properly. So I think I recognise that it is very difficult because Keir Starmer wants to indicate that and correctly actually, that this was a foolishly engaged in encounter. At the same time, I think for Britain to have now be sending, what little defence material we have abroad in this war, while at the same time it not being clear whether we are actually support what's being done at all or not, that is very unclear, and I think it's damaged our alliances. But I say all that, it's very easy to say that when you're a newspaper columnist or a former advisor to someone. It's much more difficult for Keir Starmer. So I do recognise it is a very hard thing that he's got to make a decision about.
Lord Finkelstein, thanks so much for joining us. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Well, look, Danny Finkelstein there, talking about some of the difficulties now that we appear to be in this conflict with Iran. One person who is very well able to talk us through the latest developments on that conflict is our security and defence analyst, Michael Clark. Great to have you with us. I just wondered if I could start with the Strait of Hormuz, because Donald Trump obviously saying that he wants other countries to come in and to help reopen it. He's calling on 7 countries, I think, isn't he, to get involved. How easy or not would that be?
It's not easy for anybody to do because the Strait of Hormuz is very easy to close in the sense that you can make it dangerous and keep it dangerous with comparatively little hardware, which is what the Iranians obviously can do. But it can be done with a good application or an application of quite a lot of military force. So to do it, you've got to have a gun line of destroyers along not just the Strait of Hormuz, but all the way along the Iranian side of the Gulf, and that's 200 miles. So you set a set of destroyers which can take down any aerial threat, so drones or ballistic missiles that are heading towards ships. Then you need to launch attacks along that coastline, anything that moves, that looks as if it could be a threat. And then you've got to do something about the mines that may be in the Gulf, which means you've got to sweep them. And mine sweeping is not easy. And, you know, all navies have given up on mine sweeping over the years. I mean, we used to be the best in the world at mine sweeping, mine countermeasures, and now we're not. But that's the problem. It's a very specialist thing to do, and it takes time. The last time mines were planted in the Gulf was 1991. And several hundred mines were thrown into the Gulf by Saddam Hussein, and it took weeks and weeks to clear them. Not a week, several weeks. I think it was something like 6-7 weeks to clear them. So it can be done, but it's a big military operation in itself.
It's fascinating to see the list of countries he's suddenly requested the help of, including China.
Yes.
I mean, inconceivable before this that you'd have US and China want to be on the same military operation. Is the offset to that Iran would be less likely to attack a military presence in the Straits if it included China, or is this all just wishful tweeting?
Well, it's wishful tweeting. I mean, already Australia and Japan have turned him down. Germany has turned him down. And the Chinese, I'm sure, will effectively turn him down because the Chinese are making an arrangement to have their tankers pass through. The Iranians are now in the position of saying, we will decide who goes through. Indian tankers, if they ask, can go through. Chinese tankers can go through, but nothing. American tankers can't. Western tankers can't. And that will enrage the Americans because the Iranians, they're setting the agenda, which often is the case in these asymmetric wars. The side that is the weaker has one or two pressure points, and they use them to set the agenda. That's what they're doing. So I'm sure the Chinese won't go in for this because they can get their tankers out anyway, just by talking to the Iranians.
I mean, Donald Trump's also come out, hasn't he, and he said that if these countries don't help, it could be, in his words, very bad for the future of NATO. Yeah. We didn't have to help them with Ukraine. Ukraine's thousands of miles away from us. In other words, like really trying to ramp up the pressure, I guess, on countries like the UK to get involved. I mean, do you think we should take those threats seriously about NATO?
No. I mean, the point is, I mean, I remember saying ages ago that when Trump was going out of his way to insult all of his allies, I remember saying then on Sky, you know, there'll come a time when he needs his allies. I didn't quite think it would be this soon, but there it is. And the point is, he's already, I mean, the Trump White House is already doing its worst in NATO. I mean, under Trump, America is a lousy ally, and it's no friend to Europe. Now, I'm saying that under the White House here, not the United States, because Congress has already passed legislation to prevent the White House withdrawing too many troops from Europe. It's got limits on what it can do. There's a lot of pro-NATO sentiment in the Republican Party, as well as across Congress and in the American public. But the MAGA Republicans, who currently control the White House and control the Congress, at least the top of the Congress, and quite a lot of the Supreme Court, and parts of the media, that group, that elite group, is quite a small group, but it's a very powerful one. And they are no friends to Europe, and they're lousy allies. So, in a way, it's not clear what more he could do against his allies. And I think the Europeans are going to say, look, we have to make our own decisions on this. We've seen it. We saw it at Davos. We saw it at the Munich Security Conference. The Europeans have stopped trying to be nice to Trump because they realise it doesn't get them anywhere, and that they've got to say, we are pursuing our national interests, as you do, Mr. Trump. So our national interests are to do this, this and this. And I think the Europeans may take a view on the Strait of Hormuz, which they will try to make a united view, and they'll push that through, whatever it is.
I mean, just on that, you know, Keir Starmer's tone has certainly changed within the last couple of weeks, you know, when he talks about with Donald Trump.
Yeah, no, it definitely has. And same with Pat McFadden just earlier. Just quickly, finally, Michael, 5,000 ground troops sent to the region by the US. Any idea what...
landings. It's the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit based in Okinawa. And this is, they call it the 911 force. It's their crisis response force. It's very powerful. Like the Marines have got a bit of everything. So they've got their own air power, their own air force, their own navy, their own troops, the Marines. You don't send the 31st MEU to a region to add to naval power or to add to air power. You only send the Marines to land on a contested ground, to land on a contested shore. That's what the Marines do. So they are there for landing. And it'll be 2 weeks before they get there, 12 days maybe. So we're on a countdown now. When the 31st MEU arrives, the Americans will have the capability, if they choose to use it, to actually invade parts of the Gulf Coast, of the Iranian part of the Gulf Coast. So this is the possibility of boots on the ground. That's what they do. They put people ashore on a contested space. That's what the Marines are for.
Takes them 12 days to get there.
It will do from Okinawa, yeah. They're based in Okinawa, and it's the Tripoli, which is the assault ship, the San Diego, and the New Orleans, which are the 2 floating docks, and then quite a lot of other stuff that goes with it. Wow. But it is literally, it's like a war. It's like a micro war fighting unit that's got a bit of everything. And when it goes somewhere, the 22nd MEU went to Venezuela, for instance. When it goes somewhere, it is there to start a war on the ground.
Michael, great stuff as always. Thank you so much. You'll be back with us later in the programme. We'll continue the discussion with Michael Clark. As you can see, Jackie is with us because we will be ending the hour with something a little bit more positive.
Yeah, it was a great weekend.
Less divisional.
Yeah, great weekend.
Depending on what team you support.
Well, it's actually, yeah, when Arsenal win, it is. Yeah.
Positive for an Arsenal fan.
It was a super weekend, Sophie. It was a big weekend in the Premier League, very pivotal in many ways. It was a great weekend to be a teenage sports star. There were 2 real standout candidates for Teenager of the Weekend. And it was a better weekend for Spurs. They showed some grit and some fight and, more importantly, got a point.
We'll be right back with the sport.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty.
War isn't pretty.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Welcome to the world.
Come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? This is the war game.
There were a number of armed security.
We want to discover, to find out what's really going on.
Everything you need to know about British politics in about 20 minutes.
I actually don't like political drama.
So, where next?
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Over there, to your left. There have been airstrikes every day. Hezbollah are very sensitive about us showing any pictures, and we're being hurried away right now.
It felt akin to riding into some sort of Armageddon.
Many other areas have been hit badly. There are shells coming in every few minutes. Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city, where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford, and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
It's trying to hit us. That's it. It got us then.
There's a lot of action going on. A lot of hits coming in still.
We were the first journalists and the only outsiders to reach the site of the attack several weeks after it happened.
We found from the missile.
It's very difficult to see what around here could be conceived of as a legitimate military target. Only about half a mile from the Turkish coast, a boat seriously overcrowded. This is one of the most severe viruses in the world. Clearly not had very much to eat at all, a lot of them extremely thin and very frail. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
The world's largest falls now down to a trickle in places.
I can't imagine how much plastic is lying at the bottom of this huge lake.
Whoa! Getting up close and personal with a rhino.
This is what makes the job so fantastic.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Well, we're back with the sport. I've got a big smile on my face. Jackie's got the sport.
It's a good weekend.
It was a great weekend.
It was a good weekend.
But not just the result, because of who was there. Anyway, firstly,
right.
What was yesterday?
Yeah, let's talk about Spurs. Under massive pressure going to Liverpool. I don't think many people thought they would go there and get something, given that Igor Tudor has had such a disastrous start to his tenure. But they did. They showed a bit of grit. They showed a bit of fight. And they got an equalising goal. It was very late, so it must have been pretty satisfying. 90th minute was Richarlison. And Liverpool have this knack of conceding very, very late goals. In fact, they've done it 8 times this season, and it was desperate for them because they were almost nailed on for the 3 points. They were booed off, actually, Liverpool. But for Spurs, a bit of a lifeline.
He's a modest chap, Richarlison.
We were just talking about his tattoo of himself.
He has a tattoo of himself on his back. Too good.
Just Googled it in the break. It's quite something.
There's quite a lot of chat as well about how much Villa have fallen off. You know, they were it's almost like they don't want Champions League football next season. They don't want to hang on to that 4th spot. They go to Man United and lose 3-1. But my goodness, what a job Michael Carrick has done, is still doing. I think it was 7 wins from 9 since he took charge, which is...
They're top of the Premier League table since he was appointed.
Yeah. And, you know, in third, looking pretty comfortable for that Champions League spot. And Bruno Fernandes was absolutely epic yesterday. 2 assists, just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And they just look a different team, don't they? Mm-hmm. Very different.
Respect to Michael Carrick.
OK, let's not talk about them anymore. Let's talk about Arsenal, because...
About a boy who's in school this morning.
Yeah, I mean, Max Dowman gets this sort of amazing historic goal, you know, the youngest player to score in the Premier League, on the weekend, and Saturday night, in fact. And then this morning, as we speak, he's getting into his school uniform, probably having a bit of toast and making sure he's got all his homework, because he'll be in school today. I mean, what kind of reception is he going to get from his mates? I mean, this is just awesome.
Just unbelievable.
And could end up being, you know, the pivotal moment, I think, in this Premier League campaign. I don't want to talk too soon, but it really could have been the moment where Arsenal have the belief they can win it. And that moment also, it was so late, kind of popping something in the Man City dressing room. You know, they had to then go on and play and get a result, and they got a draw.
I have
who's to say it wouldn't have been different had Arsenal dropped points there?
I don't like to get ahead of ourselves with the Arsenal thing, but with Dowman now, it's also, you just like...
Stop talking about him.
Don't put too much pressure
on
him. You just sort of... He's 16.
He's not even a proper pro yet.
No.
Like, he can't sign pro papers until he's 17. And actually, he's only just 16. So, like, a few weeks ago, he was 15.
It's mad. It is mad.
Absolutely.
Do you know what? School would be such a letdown after that. The oh, God.
I know. But it'd be great, though, just showing off in front of your mates,
that's
right?
true.
But I don't think it doesn't look like a show-off. We didn't even really show off that much about that goal. I think
what was
what
I loved about that? The players, the senior players...
Love him.
Love him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everyone, I mean,
Protect
it's an important goal as well, but everyone, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. We've no time, but we should say that Matt Fitzpatrick almost won the Players' Championship last night and then didn't at the last minute.
Can we talk about it more next hour?
Yeah.
Back to sport, let's out. We'll be back after the short break with all the day's top stories.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond. You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Good morning. It is 8 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Rich and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilfred, very good morning from me as well. Lots ahead.
Donald Trump demands help from the UK and other countries to protect the Strait of Hormuz.
Israel strikes Lebanon overnight as its military confirms limited operations against Hezbollah in South Lebanon.
Most Dubai flights are suspended after a drone hits a fuel tank near the airport.
Also today, 2 people have died and 11 are seriously ill after an outbreak of a rare form of meningitis at Kent University.
And it was a good night at the Oscars for Jessie Buckley, who scooped the award for Best Actress.
A very good morning to you. The war in Iran is now entering its 3rd week and the situation on the ground is dire and worsening. The conflict is being felt across the region. Missile and drones were shot down over the UAE last night, but the focus for the US certainly is on the Strait of Hormuz, that crucial shipping route we've been discussing almost daily now.
So Donald Trump is calling for, or he uses the word demanding, at least 7 countries, including the UK, to come and help him protect the strait from Iranian attacks. None of the 7 countries have so far answered his call, and now the US president has warned that NATO faces, in his words, a very bad future if they don't help him.
Here he is speaking on Air Force One.
It only takes a couple of people to screw up the strait, a couple of terrorists. You don't need their military is defeated, but all you need is a few people dropping mines here and there, and you louse it up. So we need. I'm demanding that these countries come in and protect their own territory because it is their territory. It's the place from which they get their energy, and they should come and they should help us protect it.
Well, earlier we asked Pat McFadden, the Minister, for his thoughts on what Donald Trump had said. I think you can read into the UK government's position by this answer. Donald Trump said that if other countries don't help in sending these ships, it could be very bad for the future of NATO. He then said we didn't have to help them with Ukraine. Ukraine's thousands of miles away from us, but we helped them. Now we'll see if they help us. I'm not sure that they're going to be there for us. Are you worried that Donald Trump could stop supporting NATO, could stop funding NATO, if other countries don't do what he wants when it comes to Iran?
Well, that's the president right there. The quote that you've just given has summed him up. It's a very transactional presidency, and our job is to navigate this, to always remember that the friendship between the United States and the United Kingdom runs very deep. It's a good relationship. It's enduring, and I think it will outlast all the personalities involved.
Pat McFadden, last hour. Let's bring in Sally. She's in Dubai for us. And Sally, I guess we've seen ongoing disruption across the region, but specifically in Dubai, with lots of flights now grounded.
Yeah, that's right, Wilf. Just when I think things might be calming down here, something else happens. And Dubai International Airport was hit overnight, and there have been incoming missiles over Abu Dhabi today. We've had a confirmation in the last hour from Abu Dhabi, which I'm just going to start with, Wilf, because it involves a casualty. Officials have reported that a missile has fallen on a civilian vehicle in Abu Dhabi, and there is a casualty of Palestinian nationality from that incident. That's all we know so far. But I've been hearing there have been a number of interceptions and blasts heard over Abu Dhabi this morning. And then around 3:30 this morning, there was an explosion at Dubai International Airport following a drone attack. A large fire seen there after one of the fuel tanks was hit. I heard from eyewitnesses who described seeing a large inferno. I've also heard from passengers who couldn't get through. One woman was on her way to get a flight back to Glasgow. She said she had a second blast around 5 a.m. and just had to turn back. Now, we have heard that the fire is contained, it's been brought under control, and they are working to try and get flights moving again. But it's caused a lot of disruption. Flights have been turned around mid-air from the UK, from Dublin, Edinburgh and London this morning. And, you know, as hard as they've been working here, the airport and airlines, to try and get flights moving again, it just goes to show how volatile this situation is. This is the third known strike on Dubai International Airport since the war kicked off.
And so I guess it reflects just wider conflict, strikes, more countries in the region continuing to be impacted by this.
Yeah, that's right, Sophie. Baghdad airport was also attacked overnight, 5 injured there. Saudi Arabia have said that they've intercepted more than 60 drones just since midnight. And, you know, we're seeing the huge implications as well of the Strait of Hormuz coming under fire. It's become a battleground. You know, commercial shipping has ground to a halt. Now, we actually haven't heard of any incidents of vessels being attacked in the last 24 hours in the Strait of Hormuz, despite that happening, you know, regularly and routinely until now. But shipping hasn't started flowing through the Strait of Hormuz again because it is just so dangerous. And of course, we've been hearing Donald Trump discussing trying to pull together some coalition of countries to try and police the Strait of Hormuz. Well, we've heard from Australia. They've said they are not going to be sending a warship to the region to help with that. And I think any sort of plan trying to pull that together is going to take time. And, you know, speaking to analysts, they've said that the Strait of Hormuz being closed for 2 weeks is painful, but we can just about manage it. But beyond that is worst case scenario for the global economy. And it's not just the Strait of Hormuz, of course, that's impacting this region because, you know, the UAE borders the Strait of Hormuz along with Oman and Iran, but also the domestic infrastructure here. Tehran has been threatening to target more areas in the UAE over the weekend, ports. We've seen the airport hit a number of times. We've seen Abu Dhabi airport hit a number of times. The financial district is now a target from Iran. And I think there's just a lot of concern here that Tehran, even though they are being weakened in this war, is still managing to hit the global economy and countries like the UAE really where it hurts.
Sally, great stuff. Thanks so much. Let's have a look at what that ongoing conflict is doing in the markets. And an hour ago, we were saying that the oil price reaction to the ongoing conflict over the weekend was relatively muted, but it's just picked up a little bit in the course of the last hour. Oil price is now up 3% this morning, taking Brent, the international gauge for oil prices, to 106. You can see today's jump just here. I think it's really just stark to dwell on the shape of the oil price move since the start of this conflict, because I want to come back to this in a later chart, but clearly sharply higher with a bit of a pullback in the middle of last week, continuing on Friday and then into this morning. It's March higher. And as we stand here now, Brent crude is up more than 50% since the start of March, since the start of the conflict. Just pin that in your mind for a moment. Let's look at UK borrowing costs. The shape of the chart for UK borrowing costs, very similar. The move today, actually not similar. We've just seen borrowing costs ease a fraction today, but Friday did see quite a continued move higher that had again paused during the middle of last week. A reminder, we're now above 4% on this is the 2-year UK borrowing cost. A reminder that the Bank of England base rate is 3.75% as we stand. So what this chart is showing you is that the market does not expect the Bank of England to cut rates when they meet next on the 19th of March, even to expect some point in the year ahead a possibility of a rate hike. But the key point for me this morning, the shape of the move in borrowing costs, you just saw the shape of the move and the scale of it in oil prices. Let's now look at the MSCI World Index. This is a sort of basket of international stocks. And the big difference that we're seeing play out across the markets, rather a small move so far down in equity markets relative to that massive jump we've seen in oil prices. So since the start of March, MSCI World global stocks only down 5%. Whereas, as I said earlier, oil prices are up more than 50% in the same space of time. And even though, as Sally was just pointing out, that the conflict continues, we're 2 weeks in and there's no signs of it calming down, what the equity market is sort of saying is we think this move is going to be temporary. Whether or not that will be the case, of course, remains to be seen. But at the moment, there's a big disconnect in the scale of the move down in stocks and the scale of the move we showed you already in oil prices, which are up a further 3% this morning to $106 a barrel, Sophie.
Well, it really is relentless, isn't it? And, you know, as Wilfred was just saying, all those kind of lines and numbers feed through into higher prices, already been filled obviously, with, you know, petrol prices at the pumps, or if you've got heating oil, for example. We're going to be hearing from the Prime Minister later this morning on what the UK government is doing to try and help people here in Britain from the economic impact of the war that Wilf was just outlining. We've got Alex Rogers here to tell us a bit more. So what are we expecting to hear from Keir Starmer?
So we're expecting him to announce emergency support for some of the poorest households who use heating oil, as you say, because the cost of that has risen by about 80% in a week. It affects rural households, lots of households in Northern Ireland as well. So I think he's trying to keep sending the signal that it's the cost of living, it's the impact that this war is having on consumers in the UK that's his real priority, despite Donald Trump issuing calls for the UK and other allies to send warships to the Strait of Hormuz. Obviously, we know that the effective closure of that is what's pushing up the oil prices, but the Prime Minister keen to say we are not going to get dragged in this war. My focus remains on the domestic issues here at home.
And he has had a call with President Trump and he is speaking to other G7 leaders.
Yes, so Donald Trump and Keir Starmer had a call last night where they both spoke about the importance of reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Obviously, the President wants us to go further than we are currently, but it seems that Keir Starmer and other G7 allies are having to find this balance really between, playing a role but not getting too far involved, and that's what's proving quite tricky at the moment.
Alex, Christoph, thanks so much.
I think we've got some latest pictures that we can bring you now. This is Mark Carney. You can see there the Canadian Prime Minister, who is wrapping up his latest international trip to London, meeting Keir Starmer. You can see there, and also, of course, his wife, Victoria. The obligatory picture there on the steps of Number 10. He's going to be meeting, of course, with Keir Starmer and also King Charles before starting his holiday. On the agenda, of course, number one will be the war in Iran and its impact on global trade. They did speak on the phone on Sunday, just before Mark Carney's arrival in London as well, and I'm sure they're going to be talking about specifically that request from Donald Trump for some of the international allies to send warships to the Strait of Hormuz as Iran continues to try and hit vessels in that critical route, all, of course, trying to bring down the cost of living. But I think it'll be interesting to see if both men continue to resist the call.
Of course, he knows London well, Mark Carney. Been back in England governor for many years. Interesting time to take a holiday. Interesting place to come on holiday when you used to live here and work here.
Oh, it's the best place in the world, isn't it?
Well, that's true.
So,
that's true.
Unsurprising.
Gosh.
Maybe he's got some friends he wants to catch up with over here.
Yeah, that's true. That's good. And I don't know why I'm not putting it off as a place. I wouldn't come to London. Well, yeah, I live here, that's why.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway,
might want a bit more sunshine at this time
But
of
my
year
bigger
as well.
point was interesting time to take a holiday.
Yeah, there's
But that's
quite
not our job, as the Canadian press might be asking that question.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, I think it's fair to say.
Right, moving on. 2 people have died and 11 are seriously ill in hospital after an outbreak of meningitis at the University of Kent.
So the UK Health Security Agency is providing antibiotics to some children students in the Canterbury area because of this rare form of the disease that they found. We can talk now to Emma Birchley, who's at the University of Kent and who can tell us more. Emma, what do you know?
So what we're talking about here is invasive meningococcal disease, which is bacterial. It causes meningitis, it can cause septicemia. So meningitis is the inflammation of the lining of the brain and the spinal cord. And septicemia, sepsis, is blood poisoning. The problem with this bacterial version of meningitis is the onset is rapid. And you can become seriously ill, and as we know, it can kill you. So 2 people aged 17 to 21 are known to have died. Now, the University of Kent has confirmed that one of those people is a student. The other is believed to be a sixth former from the area, and there have been links to a night out, actually not this weekend just gone, but the weekend before, at Club Chemistry in Canterbury. That club putting on their social media advice to make sure that close contacts get antibiotics, and that is the message which is being very firmly pushed here. We know that 11 young people are in hospital. They are seriously ill, so there is a huge amount of concern. And the symptoms that you need to look out for, it's not easy because they're not dissimilar to having a cold or flu or even a hangover. So things like vomiting, dizziness, a fever, confusion,
but also fast breathing or breathlessness, blotchy skin, and then quite late stage is the rash that you get. We hear about, don't you? If you roll a glass on top of the rash, it doesn't disappear. And the fact is that those symptoms do need to be spotted, and there is advice that if you feel concerned, you have to make sure that you go to A&E, you call 999, and actually all close contacts are thought to have been contacted by the NHS and by the UK Health Security Agency, antibiotics given, but anyone who lives in particular blocks here, so that's King's College Block Q, Tyler Court Block C, so those who live there, students and also staff, are being urged to make sure that they get these antibiotics. And actually there is a session that's been set up today, a few minutes walk from where I am here in the Senate building, for people to go and get those antibiotics. And finally, the advice being that if you're in student halls, you're in your shared house and you know a friend is unwell, keep an eye on them because swift action could save a life.
Emma, thank you very much indeed. Well, our next guest is here to talk about assisted dying, the Labour MP and also consultant doctor Peter Prinsley, who joins us now.
Good morning.
It's great to have you on the programme. Before we get to that, I just wondered if you wanted to make any comment on the meningitis story, because I just feel like a lot of our viewers, whether you've got a child at home, a young child, or, you know, a student at university, might be wondering what kind of symptoms to look out for.
Well, it's obviously a very frightening story to have an outbreak like that in a university. I mean, if people are unwell, if they're getting headaches, they're feeling sick, particularly if they develop this rash, then they need to take attention of that. And, you know, it's an eminently treatable condition with antibiotics if treated quickly. So I think the main thing, my main advice would be just to be very aware that this is going, you know, this is a problem right now.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, giving us a health advice on the spot. We appreciate
there we are.
multi-talented. You're here as well, of course, to talk about the assisted dying legislation, because there's been a lot of concern that this is getting, I guess, as supporters would say, tangled up in the Lords, and that it's never going to make it through Parliament. And just talk to us about your own kind of concerns on this.
Well, what happened is that the bill was passed in the House of Commons last year. There was a second reading and a third reading, and it passed with a small but definite majority. It went to the House of Lords, and the normal situation is that the Lords has the opportunity to scrutinise and modify the bills that have gone from the Commons. But in this particular instance, a small group of Lords who are opposed, I believe, implacably to the bill, have tabled, I think, about 1,200 amendments, which means there's nothing like enough parliamentary time for the bill to pass through the House of Lords in the time available. And that's called a filibuster. And it's a bit of a strange name, but that's what it is. And it means that there's no realistic prospect of the will of the Commons being enacted in this session of Parliament. So a letter was sent to the Prime Minister suggesting that requesting that time is made available in the next session of Parliament for the matter to be re-debated. And if it were to be blocked again in the Lords, then the Speaker of the House of Commons could enact what are called the Parliament Acts, which are a way of ensuring that the will of the Commons prevails.
I guess, stepping back from all of this, are you basically saying that, put all the parliamentary procedure aside, the government, the Prime Minister, needs to make this a priority and almost put his weight behind it? Because thus far, this isn't government policy. It's an individual private member's bill.
Yes. Well, I mean, I think that it's a matter of conscience. It's a conscience vote. And I expect that there are members of the government, probably in the Cabinet, who are opposed to this, which I think makes it difficult for it to be a government bill. But it can either come back as a private member's bill if one of the private members it comes high up in the ballot, or what we've suggested to the Prime Minister is that some government time be made available for it to be debated in the House of Commons, whilst maintaining the neutrality of the government. It's very unusual for a private member's bill to get stuck like this in a way in which the Parliament Acts would be deployed. In fact, that's never previously happened.
Do you think that, I guess, opponents of the bill would say This is such a huge change, a societal change. And it also has lots of quite thorny implications to work through, whether that's the impact on, the Justice Department, on the Health Department, all these kind of things. It is right that they scrutinise it, that they put as many amendments in as they want.
I absolutely agree that it's a huge change and it must be scrutinised carefully. And that is the role of, scrutiny is the role of the Lords. But in all honesty, some of the amendments which have been tabled are clearly designed to filibuster and block the progress.
So it's bad faith. You think it's been done in bad faith, is what you're saying?
I wouldn't go so far as to say bad faith, but, there's a small group of Lords who are philosophically opposed to this bill and have taken it upon themselves to block it. Frankly, the will of the Commons is that it should pass, and that is also the will of the people. If surveys are conducted, it's 7 or 8 out of 10 of all the people think that this bill should come into law.
That's very interesting. Do you go as far to say it's the will of the people when it's a survey? I mean, could opponents of the bill also not say there's no mandate for such a massive societal change, and if this is to really come about, a party should say this is what we want and be elected with it as part of their manifesto?
In their manifesto. Well, you could say that, but, this was a private member's bill. The members of Parliament were elected by the voters, and they have passed this bill in the Commons. My guess is that if you were to have a vote for this, suppose you were to put it to a referendum, I think there would be overwhelming support for this.
Can I ask about your own view on this? Because you obviously come from this from a medical background,
yes.
And not all doctors think the same.
No, that's
we
true.
heard from doctors in the House of Commons who actually were worried about vulnerable people being pressured, for example, or feeling pressure and all of that kind of thing. But how have you arrived at the view that you have on this subject?
My view changed.
Did it?
So when I was a young doctor, I thought this wasn't something that we should do. I mean, I had a sense that it was an unconscionable thing. But as I became an older doctor and I began to see more and more patients in trouble, I began to think this is really what should happen. I mean, my specialty has been ear, nose and throat surgery. I've dealt with patients with advanced cancers in the head and neck. And some of these patients have a very difficult time towards the end of their lives. And I know that the people say that we must simply invest in palliative care and make it as good as we can, and we must. I have absolutely no disagreement with that. And one of the side effects of this debate has been the idea that we must invest more in palliative care, and there have been debates about precisely that. But I have to say that there are patients where the limits of palliative care are reached. And in my specialty, I have seen that. And therefore, my view changed. And actually, I think that's pretty common amongst doctors. If you ask younger doctors whether they think this is the right thing to do, they're less likely to agree. But if you meet the older, more experienced doctors, they're more likely to agree it.
And what would you say to the argument about some of those people at the end of their life, right,
yes,
who might feel that they're a burden on their families?
Well, look, I know that some people probably do feel that they're a burden on their family. But, the way in which this bill is constructed is that there will be very close scrutiny of exactly that. A panel of a psychiatrist and a social worker will scrutinise particularly this, and 2 doctors will have to agree it. And I accept that there may be people who feel that they've been pressurised, but I believe that the bill has been constructed in such a way as to deal with that particular problem.
Dr. Princey, thanks so much for joining us. Good to see you.
All right, thank you very much
Thank
for
you. It's
having me.
interesting to hear about your own experiences there.
Thank you.
We showed you some picture of Mark Carney arriving down the street just before that interview. We have a little bit of sound from the early part of our meeting.
Well, Mark, let me extend you a very warm welcome back here at Downing Street. It's really good to have you. And happy birthday. Thank you. For today. I think the opportunity we've got to put together our values and our principles and apply them to a very volatile world is really important this morning. Thank you for all your support on Ukraine. It's been invaluable, and the coalition of the willing and all the work we're able to do through NATO together on the back of a very successful G7 and bilateral last year. So we're old friends, strong history and values between our country, and a really good opportunity today to tackle the really difficult issues that confront us. So you're very welcome.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Keir, and for hosting me. And it was about a year ago today, I'd just been sworn in as Prime Minister and came here, and we agreed to work closely on a number of international issues and also to tighten our bilateral ties in intelligence sharing, in trade across a whole host of areas, and that's exactly what's been happening, and it's a good thing that has happened because the world's become even more challenging. And I do want to pick up on this point on Ukraine and really commend you here for your leadership of the Coalition of the Willing. It would not have happened without you, and it's exactly that type of leadership that the world requires now, which is to put together these coalitions that help address real issues. Now, of course, the number of issues is multiplied, so we'll have some discussions on those, and I'm very much looking forward to that.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I feel bad that I questioned he had a day off now. It's his birthday, and he's still working on it as well.
Yeah, that's why, exactly. Yeah, there you go. It all makes sense.
Anyway, a real warmth between the two of them.
Yeah.
And which you might expect, both centre-left. Obviously, Carney was Bank of England governor, so knows the UK very well. But a real affinity there and mutual respect on supporting Ukraine.
Yeah, and it feels like they're coming an awful lot of things from a similar perspective, whether it's Trump's calls over Iran to the continued support for Ukraine as well.
Happy birthday, Prime Minister Carney.
We'll dig himself out of the hole.
Yeah, I am. I've dug a few holes today. I did one on cheat sheets. Right?
Yeah.
Much respect to all table tennis players.
Yeah.
Didn't mean what I said. Do listen to Cheat Sheet if you'd like to.
But don't listen if you're a table tennis player to Cheat Sheet. Tomorrow,
you still survive. It wasn't that bad.
It wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't Timothy Chalamet levels, at least.
No. He's supportive of table tennis. But anyway, listen to Cheat Sheet. It's well worth it. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Big Sky News journalist. Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Welcome back. Well, film stars hit the red carpet last night to celebrate the best in the business at this year's Academy Awards. Sinners and one battle after another were the biggest winners of the night, the latter coming away with Best Picture. Here's Katie Spencer, who has the full Oscars report.
Jessie Buckley.
It might have been the most predictable win of the night, but that didn't make the moment any less emotional for Jessie Buckley.
This is... This is really something.
History-making as the first ever Irish star to win for Best Actress for her role in Hamnet. Sinner's Michael B. Jordan similarly overwhelmed by his Best Actor win.
Oh, man, y'all. I stand here because of the people that came before me.
A poignant moment provided by Sinner's cinematography, Autumn Gerald Arkapow, the first woman ever to triumph in that category.
I really want all the women in the room to stand up, because I feel like I don't get here without you guys.
One battle after another was the big winner, with 6. Filmmaker Paul Thomas Anderson going from having no Oscars to taking home more than he could carry, including for his writing and direction.
I wrote this movie for my kids to say sorry for the housekeeping mess that we left in this world we're handing off to them, but also with the encouragement that they will be the generation that hopefully brings us some common sense and decency.
This was a political and punchy Academy Awards, from Jimmy Kimmel's joke about press censorship.
As you know, there are some countries whose leaders don't support free speech. I'm not at liberty to say which. Let's just leave it at North Korea and CBS.
To Javier Bardem striding on to make a statement.
No to war and free Palestine.
While there was no win for Timothée Chalamet, there were veiled references to his controversial criticism of the arts.
I'm told there's concerns about attacks from both the opera and ballet communities.
K-pop Demon Hunters rounded off its record-breaking run as Netflix's most-watched film ever with 2 golden statuettes. British actors went home empty-handed, but Mike Hill's makeup for Frankenstein meant we had a winner from Warrington.
My mate Jacob Elordi, who sat for 400 hours in the makeup chair during filming.
One battle's Best Picture win, solidifying its successful award season.
What a night. You guys, let's have a martini. This is pretty amazing. Cheers. Thank you very much.
Stiff drinks perhaps needed to get through celebrations during such chaotic times. Katie Spencer, Sky News in Hollywood.
Well, Shanti Omkar, film, TV and culture critic, is here with us to discuss it all. Very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Morning.
So one battle after another, the biggest winner, and was that quite expected?
It was indeed. Even though Sinners had more nominations and broke all records for the most nominated movie of all time by, for nearly 100 years of the Oscars, Paul Thomas Anderson and One Battle After Another is the one that's been the awards favourite across the board, and it certainly has come out the top winner. Best film, best director, best adapted screenplay, everything has gone to that, including best casting.
And Sean Penn also won Best Supporting Actor.
Yeah.
And I remember from the BAFTAs, he wasn't actually there. Was he there last night?
He wasn't, no. Apparently he's en route to Ukraine, from what I hear, and he didn't show up. He is not a big fan of award ceremonies, and he's become more of a politicized person these days than ever before. And he's no stranger to the Oscars, but he just didn't show up. And Kieran Culkin, when giving, and picking up the award, he kind of said, well, maybe he didn't want to turn up.
Yeah.
There was quite a lot of politics, though, right, last night as well?
Yes, I guess we're in a very political space at the moment, and it shows in some ways. You look at a film like One Battle After Another, it is a very political film. It is showing you people rebelling against an oppressive regime in so many ways, and that's something that's shown across the winners as well. Although, you know, K-pop Demon Hunters came away as the big winner this year, and Zootropolis, the much more political movie, the one that has, you know, it's broken all records for animation, didn't actually win, which was quite surprising. But this is the power of a family movie, I guess.
Though I think the makers of Zootropolis 2 will be pleased with their box office haul instead. Best Actor, which had a bit of sort of controversy in the lead-up, but we were just discussing this. You thought Michael B. Jordan won it, hands down, was always going to win it. But there was some controversy, obviously.
There was. Timothée Chalamet, as he's called, he was the front runner. At the start of the award season, we all believed he was going to win. You know, in Marty Supreme, he was in every frame. He seemed to be that front runner. But Michael B. Jordan won the Actors Award, which is from the Screen Actors Guild. And that gave us a very good indicator of how his peers were feeling, because that's one of the things that indicates how the Oscars will go. And Michael B. Jordan played not 2 but 3 roles in Sinners, and each role was played so differently, playing twins, but one with dimples, one without. He was able to do all that with just how his face moved. Incredible. His craft is stunning. From Fruitvale Station, his early film, to what he's done in Wakanda Forever and Black Panther, to what he's done now. He's a fantastic actor. And I guess this was his time to win.
And we've got to talk about Jessie Buckley as well, right? First Irish woman to come home with that award.
Indeed, and she played such a fantastic role in Hamnet. The whole film was created around her and that role, and it really shows. There was, if she didn't win this one, there would have been a huge uproar. Everybody would have been shocked. But her winning this was the one that cemented her as being the finest in her craft.
It was also the first, this is so unbelievable, the first woman ever to win the Cinematography Award.
That's right, Autumn Durald Akrapau. She's amazing. She's done the cinematography for, you know, Wakanda Forever, for example, and you know that she can frame things so beautifully. And with Sinners, working with the IMAX cameras and creating Michael B. Jordan in his twins and vampire character, and framing that in a way that all of us saw these characters so beautifully on screen. It really did make a difference, and having a woman like that winning just feels great.
Ashanti, thank you so much for joining us. Really enjoyed it, and no doubt you had a late night watching it all come in.
I did, a bit blurry-eyed this morning.
Doesn't show at all, Ashanti Omgar.
Thank you, thank you.
Right, time to talk to the Conservatives. Now an awful lot going on with Iran, and also the government's announcement when it comes to youth unemployment too. The Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, Samel Stride, joins us now. Good to have you with us. If we could start on Iran, Donald Trump is now asking for the UK to send warships to protect the Strait of Hormuz. Should we send them?
So it's difficult for me to comment on specific assets and their movements, given that we don't know the intelligence and the advice being in opposition. But I'd make a broader point, which is I think that when it came to standing up for our national interest, the government has been far too flat-footed. They didn't give access to our bases to the Americans initially, for example, and yet have ended up in exactly that position. But of course, what has happened in the interim is they've really upset the US president. The relationship has deteriorated, and they're now in a position where if their decision is not to send a ship or another ship or a minesweeper or an aircraft carrier or whatever, I think that makes it even more difficult.
I mean, I guess some people listening might be saying, you know, the way to deal with this transactional president is to stand up to him. And, you know, it sounds a little bit like he's threatening NATO here. He said if other countries don't help and send these ships, it could be very bad for the future of NATO. I mean, it's a bit of a threat, right?
Well, President Trump has his own inimitable way of conducting his relationships with others around the world. But the most important things here are, firstly, that we don't unduly and unnecessarily antagonise that relationship. And my argument would be that when we first got that call from the US president saying, can we have access to your bases, we should have responded in a positive way. By responding in a negative way and then indeed ending up granting that access anyway, all we did was a great deal of damage. I mean, and I think that's at the heart of the problem here.
I guess, you know, what the government would say is they didn't grant the bases initially because that was an offensive by the US that the government didn't agree with. When Iran started striking everyone in the region, you know, we had the drone strike on the Cyprus airbase, we've had attacks on Dubai, on the UAE, etc., etc. The situation's changed.
Well, it was very clear that
it
was very clear that the one thing was going to lead to the other. So I think that's the first point. And the second point is that I think when your main ally in the world, on whom you depend a great deal for our collective security in a very turbulent time across the globe, asks for help in that way, you have to have a very, very, very strong reason to say no. And, you know, with hindsight, it is very clear that that was a mistake, because we've ended up in exactly that position. But we've just done a lot of damage to the relationship in the meantime.
Donald Trump, in these overnight comments, also said we didn't have to help them, i.e. the UK and the rest of Europe, with Ukraine. Ukraine is thousands of miles away from us. Are you a bit worried that Donald Trump is going to, I guess, wash his hands of Ukraine, and the person who could end up benefiting from the war in Iran is Vladimir Putin?
Well, there's no doubt that what's happening in the Middle East has, of course, fundamentally helped the Russians, because now there's been a relaxation of some of the sanction arrangements on the trading of Russian oil, which will be of great value to the Russian economy. But look, all of this leads to a simple conclusion, which is we have got to invest now more in our defence. That's right across Europe. We have to stand on our own 2 feet. We have to ease away from some of that dependency on the Americans, and that will take some time. But we need an economy, just to get to the economy for a minute, that's strong and growing if we're to meet that challenge. And at the moment, under this government, I'm afraid all the indicators are going in the wrong direction.
On the economy, because there has been some concerning statistics, particularly around youth unemployment, right? The highest rate in 10 years. The government is announcing today some more help to try and get young people into apprenticeships, so a £3,000 payment if a company hires a young person under 25 who's been unemployed for 6 months. Do you welcome what's been announced today?
Some of the stuff around apprenticeships I think is interesting, although the government also decreased the number of higher level apprenticeships, which I think are particularly important, and none of this announcement addresses that. But the other part of the announcement is actually effectively a wage subsidy to employers employing younger people who have been out of the workforce on universal credit for at least 6 months. Now, that is a way of trying to push in a positive direction against all the negative things that this government has done when it's come to the employment of young people. So putting up national insurance that has disproportionately impacted younger people, the employment legislation that's just been passed, making it much more risky to take on younger people. So on the one hand, they're trying to apply an accelerator, but Rachel Reeves is pushing very firmly on the brake when it comes to young people and employment, and that's why we're seeing these very high levels.
Now, this is a little bit awkward to ask you, but there have been some articles speculating about your own future, saying that Kemi Badenoch might be planning a reshuffle. So, according to the Daily Mail, in a sign of her growing confidence, Ms Badenoch is understood to be planning to remove deadwood opposition cabinet ministers, holding up the party's renewal. Frontbenchers said to be most at risk include the Shadow Chancellor, Sir Mel Stride. Have you ask for some reassurance?
This is complete and utter nonsense, and I would point you to a very good article, actually, in Conservative Home, in which extensive investigation of this matter has been carried out, and it's very clear from the centre that that is absolute nonsense. What we've got to focus on now is answering that critical question as to how we hold the government to account, which is vital, but equally at the same time that we come up with the right policies to turbocharge our economy, rewire it in a way that makes it grow far faster, so we can lean into the kind of challenges that we've been discussing in this.
Are you trying to find out who's briefed this to the Daily Mail? Because it's pretty brutal. Sir Mel, who Tory officials say lacks energy, is now frozen out of key decisions. One source described him as far too slow.
It's
a bit much, isn't it?
No, it takes a person or two who may be disgruntled, feeding something in becomes a story. It is absolute nonsense, and I know that because of the conversations that I've had at the centre. It's complete nonsense. We are focused on what matters to the British people as a united party under a very strong leader in Kemi Badenoch. And that is the important work that we're involved in.
There you go, that's the message. Thanks very much indeed, Sir Mel Stride, talking to us there, Shadow Chancellor. Right, let's have a look now, shall we, at the weather.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, it's a cold start to the week, but it will become milder over the next few days, with Wednesday likely to be the warmest day of the year so far. Temperatures in the brighter spots will push towards 20 degrees Celsius. This morning it's a bit more chilly, but it is bright, and there are still a few blustery showers in the northwest, but those will give way to cloud and rain throughout the day. The winds will then freshen, becoming strong along western coast. Central, southern and eastern areas will stay largely dry. The rain, though, is going to drift through Wales and the northwest.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
As you can see, Jackie's back because after the break, we'll be talking about all the weekend sport.
Yeah, you're smiling, aren't you? You're a very happy Arsenal bunny this morning. It was a really good weekend, actually, in the Premier League. And I think it was, you know, it might have been a kind of seismic weekend in some ways. It was a great weekend to be a teenager superstar in sport generally. We're talking about Formula One a little bit too. And it was a better weekend for Spurs. All to come.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Welcome to the world.
Come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? This is the war game.
There were a number of armed security.
We want to discover, to find out what's really going on.
Everything you need to know about British politics in about 20 minutes.
I actually don't like political drama.
So, where next?
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Over there, to your left. There have been airstrikes every day. Hezbollah are very sensitive about us showing any pictures, and we're being hurried away right now.
It felt akin to riding into some sort of Armageddon.
Many other areas have been hit badly. There are shells coming in every few minutes.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city, where there's a column of Russian armoury.
I'm Alex Crawford, and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
It's trying to hit us. That's it. It got us then. There's a lot of action going on. A lot of hits going in still.
We were the first journalists and the only outsiders to reach the site of the attack several weeks after it happened.
We found from the missile.
It's very difficult to see what around here could be conceived of as a legitimate military target. Only about half a mile from the Turkish coast, a boat seriously overcrowded. This is one of the most severe viruses in the world. Clearly not had very much to eat at all, a lot of them extremely thin and very frail. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
The world's largest falls now down to a trickle in places.
I can't imagine how much plastic is lying at the bottom of this huge lake. Whoa!
Getting up close and personal with a rhino.
This is what makes the job so fantastic.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to. Being a Sky News presenter. Hello and welcome, Westminster, the heart of British politics. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think?
It's really unusual.
Mornings with Ridge and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started. Just to bring you a little bit of update on the story about meningitis. We know, of course, 2 people dying after this outbreak of an invasive form of disease in the Canterbury area. And we've had a tweet through, or I think it might be a Facebook post, actually, from Helen Waitley, who was the MP for the area, who has confirmed the second death is a Year 13 pupil at Queen Elizabeth Girls' School, which is a grammar school in Kent. She's posted to say, the meningitis outbreak in our area is a huge shock, feeling so deeply sad for the young lives lost. A Year 13 pupil at QEGS, Queen Elizabeth Girls' Schools, and a University of Kent student. My heart goes out to their families. It's incredibly worrying too for the families of the young people in hospital and others at risk. She says, I'm asking the NHS urgently for more information and guidance, especially given the rumours going around about where they may have picked it up. So that latest on the story of 2 young people dying after this outbreak of meningitis in the Canterbury area. 11 other people have fallen ill.
We'll bring you further details on that as and when they come in. The added detail there, the age, I guess, and educational institution of the second of the 2 people to have died. Now, plenty of sport action over the weekend, and Jackie's back to walk us through it all. And Jackie, kicking off with some surprising, some impressive football results yesterday.
Yeah, really good, and also on Saturday as well. But I think all eyes yesterday were on Spurs. You know, they've had such a torrid time of it. They are kind of really flirting properly with relegation, and they were going to Liverpool. And I don't think many Spurs fans thought anything was going to come of this. There was a great free kick from Dominic Szoboszlai to give Liverpool the lead, which they held for pretty much all of the match. But they do have this knack, Liverpool, of conceding goals late on. I mean, I'm talking like 90th minute plus. And they did it again. But there was a lot of fight from Spurs yesterday. That's Richarlison's goal in the 90th minute. There was a lot of fight. There was a lot more grit than they have been showing. And they've won a lot of praise for that performance. And it could be, you know, a really crucial point for them. Igor Tudor was actually applauded by the fans at the end of that match, and he's had, you know, just an awful time of it. The Liverpool fans were actually booing their team when they walked off. I think they're very sick of them conceding these late goals that have cost them so many points. And, you know, it's no joke that they might not get Champions League football. To them would be a disaster. But for Spurs, they've got Forest next weekend. That's what they call a 6-pointer, because they're both kind of flirting with relegation, and that's a really important match.
Yeah, and interesting that West Ham got a point themselves in the relegation zone the day before, so it's all to play for down at the bottom.
Man United.
Other game yesterday, yeah.
Well, Man United were playing Villa, which, you know, on paper is a really, really tough fixture. You know, Villa in 4th, Man United in 3rd. But they were just way too good for Villa, and Villa just seemed to be, you know, almost throwing away that 4th spot. But 2 assists from Bruno Fernandes yesterday, and he was absolutely fantastic. 7 wins from 9 for Michael Carrick. Lots of calls for him to be given the job on a permanent basis. It's a results business, isn't it? I don't know why you wouldn't give him a go. I mean, you know, he seems to have fit right in. The players, he plays players in position. They like him. It's working.
Fernandes has got 15 assists. Do you know what the record is in a Premier League season?
Is it 20?
It is 20.
Oh.
Shared by Henry and De Bruyne.
I was going to say, was it Thierry Henry?
Got that in his sights.
You've been Googling. Should we talk about Arsenal? I know it happened on Saturday, but I do feel Max Dowman's... What time is it now? Is it 9 o'clock yet?
He's in class.
So he's in school this morning in his school uniform, preparing for his GCSEs, which literally must be around the corner. The youngest player to score a goal in the Premier League. And it was so cool, because you just knew if you could shrug off these defenders, he's got it. Because the goalkeeper was down the other end, because he'd gone up to assist with the corner and, you know, try and get a goal for Everton. And just the celebrations were unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. And you were saying earlier, and I noticed this as well, just how much the team, the older players, love him. They're very protective.
Yeah.
Well, Declan Rice is his mentor. So, you know, Declan Rice jokes that sometimes when they were doing, you know, FaceTime calls, he realised that he was in his school uniform, he's still got his school tie on, and yet he'll be coming in to train with, you know, the big guys, like later on that day. I mean, it's extraordinary how good he is already. And,
absolutely epic.
But they have to kind of look after him. They can't.
Yeah, ease off on the pressure, which we're not doing at the moment. So.
Well, you know. It was a moment, and he changed that game to the point where, when we look back at, you know, at the end of the season and say that was the moment when Arsenal knew they were going to win the league. You know, they were looking at just taking a point from that match, or possibly even worse, and then suddenly you get all 3, and that really sort of popped the balloon, I guess, of City, who are waiting in the dressing room to go and play their match, knowing that the pressure was really on, and knowing that Arsenal had sort of got away with it a little bit again later.
Although let's not celebrate just yet. It's still a long way.
No. There's 7. to go. Last night, Players' Championship. If you're a golf fan and you didn't see it overnight, the story was Matt Fitzpatrick was trying to become the first Englishman to win this, which they kind of call the fifth major, and he was in control. Going down the 17th, he was a shot clear of Cameron Young. The two of them are very good friends, but he sort of slightly messed it up. He had a par and a bogey on the last two holes to relinquish the lead, and it was Cameron Young who sneaked it. He finished better.
But that was a good shot, right? That wasn't one of the errors.
No. But anyway, it was a shame. Snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. We've kind of been talking a little bit about that, and Cameron Young walked away with the trophy. We were talking quite a lot yesterday morning about Formula One. I don't know if you saw the second race of the season. It was quite good for the Ferraris because Lewis Hamilton got on the podium for the first time in red in his Ferrari, and he just seems a lot happier these days. It was won by Kimi Antonelli, who's just 19, the second youngest driver to win an F1 race, and his first win, and people, I think, probably the first of many. He is driving a Mercedes along with George Russell, and they seem to have the superior car. But the thing about the race was Lewis Hamilton was really tussling with Charles Leclerc, his teammate, in the Ferraris. You know, they kind of kept swapping over. You're third, no, I'm third, no, and they were overtaking all the time. And it was kind of fun to watch in that race, like who is going to get that third podium spot. But, you know, a lot of people and a lot of teams are really struggling with the new regulations and these new cars and the fact that they're, 50% combustion and 50% battery. And, Verstappen really, really hates his new car and said, this is like Mario Kart. What is the point in having this booster where you can zoom past somebody? He didn't say zoom, I'm saying that. And then your battery then is drained of power and then you're overtaken straight away again. It's like Mario Kart. It's not real Formula One. And Alonso it's going to be called the Battery World Championship. So they've lost 2 Grand Prix because of the war in Iran. That gives a lot of teams a chance to catch up and work on their cars, a whole month.
Yeah, so I was going to say, so that's the next 2 that have been
Bahrain and
dropped.
Saudi, have been
Wow,
dropped.
so it's a whole month now to the next one.
More than a month.
It's not easy to suddenly arrange a new Grand Prix to replace it.
It's really not easy. And people have to pay to host them.
We are out of time. Jackie, thank you so much. We'll be back after this.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
Sophie and Wilf, good morning from both of us. Thanks for joining us today.
Donald Trump demands help from the UK and other countries to protect the Strait of Hormuz.
Israel strikes Lebanon overnight as its military confirms limited operations against Hezbollah in South Lebanon.
Most Dubai flights are suspended after a drone hits a fuel tank near the airport.
2 people have died and 11 are seriously ill after an outbreak of a rare form of meningitis at Kent University.
And it was a good night at the Oscars for Jessie Buckley, who scooped the award for Best Actress.
Good morning. The war in Iran is now entering its third week, and the situation on the ground is dire and worsening, and it's been felt across the region as well. Missile and drones shot down over the UAE last night. The focus for the US is now the Strait of Hormuz, that crucial shipping route.
Donald Trump is calling for, in fact, he's using the word demanding, at least 7 countries, including the UK, to come and help him protect the Strait from Iranian attacks. None of the 7 have so far answered his call. The US president warns NATO faces a very bad future if allies don't help.
This is him speaking on Air Force One.
It only takes a couple of people to screw up the Strait, a couple of terrorists. You don't need their military is defeated, but all you need is a few people dropping mines here and there, and you louse it up. So we need. I'm demanding that these countries come in and protect their own territory, because it is their territory. It's the place from which they get their energy, and they should come and they should help us protect it.
Well, early this morning we asked Pat McFadden, the UK government minister, for his thoughts on what Donald Trump's been saying. Donald Trump said that if other countries don't help in sending these ships, it could be very bad for the future of NATO. He then said we didn't have to help them with Ukraine. Ukraine's thousands of miles away from us, but we helped them. Now we'll see if they help us. I'm not sure that they're going to be there for us. Are you worried that Donald Trump could stop supporting NATO, could stop funding NATO, if other countries don't do what he wants when it comes to Iran?
Well, that's the president right there. The quote that you've just given has summed him up. It's a very transactional presidency, and our job is to navigate this, to always remember that the friendship between the United States and the United Kingdom runs very deep. It's a good relationship, it's enduring, and I think it will outlast all the personalities involved.
Well, that was Pat McFadden earlier on the programme. Let's bring in Sally now. She's in Dubai for us. Sally, let's start with where you are, because overnight a lot of flights, all flights I think, were grounded in Dubai because of one drone that did breach the airport.
Yeah, good morning to you, Wilf. We've seen this a number of times already in this war, Dubai International Airport becoming a regular target by Iranian drones. And yes, a drone attack did hit a fuel tank at the airport in the early hours of this morning, around 3:30 in the morning, I'm hearing, according to eyewitnesses who live nearby. And it's caused a massive fire. Videos have emerged that we've managed to verify, showing a large cloud of smoke and a fire that was blazing for hours. We understand it is now under control, according to UAE officials, but of course it's caused a lot of disruption. The airport was closed, flights were grounded, aircraft on the way here from the UK, from Edinburgh, Dublin and London were all turned around mid-air. And then I heard from a passenger who was on her way to the airport at the time and heard a second loud blast around 5 a.m. as she was due to fly to Glasgow and just couldn't get through because the roads were also closed around the airport. Now, this is the third known time that the airport has been successfully hit since the war kicked off. But it's not been the only strike today. We've also had a wave of missiles fired towards Abu Dhabi, and one hit a civilian car and has resulted in a casualty of a Palestinian civilian. And then we're also hearing this morning from Fujairah government media office, that's one of the northern Emirates on the Gulf of Oman. Their oil facilities have also been hit again today after being struck at the weekend as well. A large fire in the port of Fujairah being reported as well.
Sally, thank you. And also, we've got to ask you as well about the wider activity in the region as well, because it does obviously really feel like this is a conflict that just continues to spill out into the wider area as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are seeing a reduced number of missiles and drones being fired at the UAE each day. It has dropped, but some are still getting through and causing a huge amount of disruption. And we've seen similar attacks on other Gulf states. Saudi have reported more than 60 drones fired into their airspace just since midnight. Kuwait, Bahrain are also reporting similar attacks. And Iraq, Baghdad airport was attacked overnight, resulting in the injury of 5 people. Now, of course, the Strait of Hormuz is the real focal point here, not just for the region when it comes to security, but for shipping and oil. And Donald Trump has talked about trying to bring together a coalition of countries to send warships here to police the strait, to get the oil and energy flow moving again through this really tight choke point for the world's energy. But it's still, you know, it's going to take time for that to happen if it does come together as a plan. And Australia has already said that they're not going to send a warship. Commercial shipping remains at a standstill. It's having a huge impact on the global economy. It's causing a lot of concern. And I should say that strike on Fujairah port this morning is also really, really important, because Tehran has threatened to attack UAE ports in retaliation for what they say were attacks on Karg Island over the weekend that came from UAE territory, something the UAE denies and says that wasn't the case. But it's having a big impact on the amount that the UAE is being hit. And Fujairah port, there's a direct pipeline from Abu Dhabi's oil fields to Fujairah, which manages to bypass the Strait of Hormuz. And the UAE has been able to keep 1.5 million gallons of oil flowing to Fujairah since the war started, but that is routinely being hit again this morning. And it's just showing that even though Donald Trump says that they've hammered Iran's military and weakened Iran, they are still managing to hit critical infrastructure here that isn't just impacting the UAE, but impacting the global economy as well.
Sally, let's pick up on that impact. Thanks so much for us from Dubai, and have just a quick look in at what the markets are doing this morning. Well, unsurprisingly, with the ongoing conflict, we're seeing oil prices pick up this morning, up about 2.5% for Brent, hovering around $105 a barrel, 106. There's a one-year chart for you. You can just see the extra uptick this morning there at the end of the chart. But the story, of course, since the start of the war is a very sharp increase. From the start of the war to today, we're up about 50%. Of course, last week there was a bit of reprieve in the middle of the week, and then we ramped up as well towards the end of the week. Up 50% for oil prices over the course of the last 2 weeks. Let's have a look at borrowing costs, because the shape of that chart, the UK two-year government borrowing costs, is pretty similar. As you can see, a sharp increase over the course of the war. A little bit of reprieve in the middle of last week. We continue to march higher, particularly on Friday in terms of the UK borrowing costs. This morning, slightly different from the oil price, just a little bit of reprieve, but we're around about 4.1% on the UK borrowing cost, two-year borrowing cost this morning. I now just want to show you what global stock prices have done. We're using MSCI World, because this is where there's a bit of disconnect. Oil prices sharply higher, share prices only a little bit lower, down about 5% so far for the course of the month of March since the war started. You can see, by the way, the scale of the sell-off we saw Liberation Day last April, when all those tariffs were increased. Much sharper sell-off in stocks then than we've seen now. And by the way, if you look at just US stocks, of course, with the main decision maker in this war, probably more focused on US stocks, it's down less than that. It's down only about 3.5% since the war started. And that's where markets are just a little bit disconnected at the moment. If it was oil prices, sharply higher, 50% so far over the last 2 weeks. Share prices, only slightly lower. So what that's sort of saying is that the equity market is saying they think this war will be over sooner than the oil market, and we'll see which one proves to be correct in the days and weeks ahead.
And Wilf, you obviously interviewed Scott Besson last week, right? Or the last couple of days ago, wasn't it? What do you think, I guess, you can read from that interview about where the US is expecting it all to go?
Well, I think the really interesting thing I said to him was, is there an oil price level that leads you to go and tell the president we can't afford this anymore? And he said 2 things. The first is that it's not the level that affects the US economy, but the duration. And again, you come to the point that the US is a net exporter of oil and gas, so the overall economy doesn't get hit until it starts to affect the consumer's consumption patterns, till they really get hit in the pocket. And for that, 2 weeks doesn't matter so much. 2 months would start to affect things a little bit. But ultimately, in terms of physical costs, he just said, we can afford this. So you're sort of seeing there that in the short term, at least, they're not going to stop this war because of economic costs. Of course, the longer it goes on, that might change. We shall see.
Yeah, it's all about the duration. I mean, that's what the UK government's grappling with as well, I think, how long this could last for. We're going to hear from Keir Starmer later this morning, and we can bring in Alex Rogers now on that. So what are we expecting Keir Starmer to say?
We're expecting him to announce more emergency support for some households that are on lower incomes and those that use heating oil, which is often relied on by lots of households in Northern Ireland and rural households. The price of that has gone up by about 80% in the past week or so. So we're expecting him to announce support on that. And I think we can maybe expect to hear a bit of defiance from Keir Starmer on why he thinks he's got this approach to the war right. You know, that he's going to insist that it was correct for the UK not to get dragged into it. And again, keeping the focus back on how the war is affecting people here in the UK.
And he has been speaking again to President Trump?
Yes, they had a call last night where they spoke about the importance of reopening the Strait of Hormuz, which is obviously this very busy oil shipping lane that's been effectively closed by the conflict. And that's what's having the knock-on effect on oil prices. But Donald Trump wants us to send warships out there, which we're not doing. We're just sending anti-drone technology at the moment. So I think you can expect some questions on that and how Starmer manages to keep Trump on side when they're clearly have differing views on how the UK should react.
Yeah, he's obviously meeting Mark Carney this morning as well. Busy morning, the Prime Minister.
The birthday cake for Mark Carney, maybe?
Yeah, he said that it was his birthday, so the Canadian Prime Minister.
What a treat going into Downing Street.
Yeah, what more could you want? Alex, thank you very much indeed.
Now, 2 people have died, including a 13-year-old pupil and a student at the University of Kent after an outbreak of meningitis in the Canterbury area.
Yeah, it's been confirmed as one person from the university and another one from a local sixth form college as well. We can talk now to Emma Birchley, who is there at the university. Emma, what can you tell us about what's happened?
Well, they're not taking any chances. If you take a look, you can see the queue there, mainly students, but actually people from the community as well. It goes all the way round here to a building called the Senate, and that is where people are coming to have antibiotics if they have been close contacts with someone who is feared to be unwell with meningitis. Now, we're talking about invasive meningococcal disease. That is the bacterial form of meningitis that it causes, and also sepsis, and it can come on incredibly quickly. It can be incredibly serious and, of course, fatal. And we know that 2 people have now died. A student here from the University of Kent, also a sixth form student. I'm just going to go and speak to some of the people who've come here. And Josh, you're not actually a student here, nor is your sister, but she is in hospital at the moment with suspected meningitis.
That's correct, yeah. We found out overnight that she was in hospital, so yeah.
I mean, that must be hugely concerning for all of you.
Absolutely, yeah. It shows you, sort of shakes your day a little bit, I can tell you that.
She's not too poorly, I understand, at the moment.
No, so as far as I'm aware, she's actually just spoken to the consultant. Again, they're going to keep her in a little bit longer, but to the best of my knowledge, I've just spoken to my mum and she seems okay, so yeah.
Thank goodness for that. So you're here to get the antibiotics?
Absolutely, yeah. Obviously, having been Mother's Day yesterday, we were together, me, my mum and my sister, and so obviously it's precautionary more than anything, but we just wanted to make sure that we could get up here. We spoke to 111 and this is what they said to do, so yeah.
OK, thanks, Josh. Now, Lubella, you are a student here. Why have you in particular come? Have you had a close contact?
One of my mates lives in one of the affected buildings, so I figured it was better safe than sorry to come get checked out.
OK, thank you. And Alex, for you, what do you think about the fact that obviously they're putting on these antibiotics now, you can come and get them, but about the fact that you didn't know about this maybe as soon as you'd hoped?
Well, yeah, it didn't help with exam stress because it's exam week for me, at least, and it's just a bit annoying. Like, I'm tired.
Yeah, of course you're tired. And what do you know about the situation? Do you know anyone who has got the meningitis or suspected?
My friend's been in hospital overnight, so he's got the all clear, but we've got other people who have been sick for a week and it's just not been great.
So huge amounts of uncertainty. We know, as you said, it's exam week, and actually there will be no in-person assessments, will there, Kelly? So why have you decided to come today?
It's just not worth the risk not coming, especially because everyone's been attending lectures and seminars and nobody really knows where they live and, you know, everyone that's around them. So the risk of just leaving it and risking it just isn't worth it, because we don't know who's been in contact with who, and then you've been in contact with them. So it's just not worth it.
And of course this happened, we think that it was not this last weekend, but the one before, actually maybe people at a nightclub, Club Chemistry, which has put advice on their social media pages. What do you think about the fact that we're this many days on and it's now that we've got people queuing up for antibiotics?
It's definitely scary, because I only found out about it last night, and emails from the uni only came through very late last night. So it's definitely scary that it had to go this far until we were actually told about it. But I do think it's good that they're doing something still, especially with antibiotics that can be offered to anyone rather than a selected amount of people. So it's good, but I definitely think that I'd rather be told a lot earlier than we had.
OK, Kelly, thanks very much. So certainly the university taking no chances now with the, I would say, hundreds queuing up already for antibiotics here. The doors were meant to open at 9. We haven't seen an enormous amount of movement yet. Just important to tell you about the symptoms, because part of the problem is that they're very similar to having flu or a hangover. So you might have a headache, dizziness, confusion, vomiting, but also not liking bright lights. And we always hear, don't we, about with meningitis, the rash that you can get if you roll a glass over it and the spots don't disappear, then that is a sign of meningitis. Although if you get to that stage, it is getting pretty serious. And the advice is very clear. If you do have concerns, phone 111, or if it's pretty serious already, go to A&E, call 999. Do not take any chances. Take quick action to save a life.
Emma, thanks very much indeed. Emma Birchley reporting there from Kent.
After the break, we'll be speaking to historian and host of multiple podcasts, including a new one called The Book Club, Dominic Sandberg. We'll be right back.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
Sometimes it feels like reading novels is a bit of a kind of fading art form, shall we say. The Prime Minister Keir Starmer once said he didn't have a favourite book, although I should say the former US President Barack Obama posts his annual list of his best reads. So how important is it, or not, for our leaders to be reading books? Well, we're joined now by the historian and host of a new book club podcast, Dominic Sandbrook. I'm so happy to have you on the programme. It's kind of a bit of a fangirl moment for me, I'll be totally honest. So thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Sophie. Lovely to see you.
Is it important for politicians to read novels?
Definitely, yeah. I think it's absolutely tragic that Keir Starmer said he didn't have a favourite book. I think a politician needs a hinterland. If they just think about politics, that's terrible for them. It means they'll make bad decisions. It means they'll be too close to it. They need a bit of escape. But also, I think reading novels, allowing you to step into somebody else's shoes, stretching your imagination, allowing you to imagine, however kind of briefly and fleetingly, what it would be like to be somebody else, I think is really important in reminding us that we're not just cocooned within our own consciousness. We're social creatures, and other people are different from ourselves, and their experiences may be just as valid and their opinions just as important. And I think for politicians especially, that's, for a democratic politician who's operating in a landscape where people have lots of different opinions, and many of them may be competing, but they may all be legitimate, I think that's actually really important. Harold Macmillan used to say that he would go to bed with a trollop every night, as in an Anthony Trollope. And I think if Keir Starmer went to bed with a... Yeah, I feel like if Keir Starmer went to bed with more trollops, that would be better for him and for the country.
Amazing. Keir Starmer did Desert Island Discs, and he was asked what novel he would bring, or what book he would bring, and he said that he'd bring a really detailed atlas with loads of shipping maps on it, which is literally, I think, the most Keir Starmer thing I've ever heard in my whole life.
Yeah, of course he would.
What?
Quite sensible, though.
Yeah, sensible, yeah. Very Starmer. What book do you think Keir Starmer should be reading?
Oh, I think he should read something funny, because he's such a laugh-a-minute person. I think he should bring The Code of the Woosters by E.G. Woodhouse. It's a brilliant book.
Dominic, obviously everyone knows you from the Rest is History podcast, but we mentioned in the tease, you have launched more broadly a new podcast, which is not just about fiction, it's just generally that we don't read enough anymore. And my question, or to try and encourage more reading on this, is, clearly the biggest distraction is screen time, and doom scrolling, etc., is a bad alternative. However, if someone wants to step away from that, they've already made that decision, and they want to learn something, I'd also say one of the distractions today is podcasts, which we're all in on. I'm with you, but do you
I'm never
accept
coming
that?
on this show ever again.
Yeah, no. But you know what I mean. It is.
I think the key thing is to do both. I think the way you should spend your evening, the most profitable way you can spend your evening, and this is just for your audience as well as you two, is to listen to a podcast about books first, ideally the book club, which is our podcast, and then you'd be inspired to go out and read the book. So tomorrow we're releasing an episode about George Orwell's 1984. And actually what the podcast gives you is we tell you about Orwell, we tell you about the context, we tell you about his life, what we made of the book. But then obviously there's nothing to compare with reading it for yourself. I guess the one thing I would say is if you don't want to read a book for yourself, you could listen to our show and then you could pretend you've read it, which is of course what most people do. But no, I think you're dead right about the phones. Let's be honest. We all probably read much less than we used to. I'm not immune to doom scrolling and spending hours and hours looking at Instagram. But I think if you make that little bit of an effort to take a book with you on the tube, or to, snatch even half an hour in the evening or something, it's time well spent. And I think the mistake that people often make is they say, well, reading books is really worthy and it's really good for you and all that kind of thing. No one wants to do that. The best reason to read a book is just that it's fun. It's a brilliant escape. It's a nice way to spend your evening. You know, you'll spend it with the most entertaining characters who've ever been created. And that's just a brilliant thing to do. And I think that's what we try to the sensibility that we try to bring to it, really, just the enthusiasm.
Dominic, we're very keen to get your thoughts on Iran, because I listened to your exceptional Restless History series on Iran and learnt an awful lot from it. But before we do, I thought I could just wade into an even more potentially controversial topic, which is Hamnet. Because you've slightly, well, I think, as your co-host put it on the book club, you disgrace yourself slightly when it comes to Jessie Buckley, who just walked off with the Oscar, right?
Yeah, I did. So for people who don't know, why would anyone know, actually? But anyway, I'll tell the people who don't know. Jessie Buckley, as you may remember, was a contestant on I'd Do Anything, the reality show to find a new Nancy in Oliver. And my wife is Irish and her sister was living with us at the time. So they voted for Jessie Buckley in every round. And this will give you an insight into the kind of person I am. I religiously voted against Jessie Buckley. I voted for whoever I thought was most likely to beat her. And it got to the final, and they were absolutely convinced that Jessie Buckley was going to win. They were very excited, kind of, you know, wrapping themselves in the green flag, basically. And Jessie Buckley lost, and I revealed to them with enormous satisfaction that I'd voted 10 times for her opponent in order to ensure her defeat. And basically, my wife, not only did she not speak to me for about a week, but whenever it's raised even now, and this is something like 18 years ago or whatever, there's like a dead silence and a sort of an incredibly frosty atmosphere descends over the house. So I've never been forgiven for that. And Jessie Buckley can enjoy all the success she wants. But she knows that I've got her number.
It's lucky that you weren't voting for the Oscars. Not maybe you would have been outvoted anyway. Again,
yeah.
But anyway, let's touch on Iran quickly. My question from your history perspective on this is how despised was the Shah when he was overthrown relative to the dissatisfaction that's in the country today towards the regime?
That's an excellent question. I think the Shah had lost a colossal amount of support. I mean, the Shah was very isolated. The Shah was very ill, for one thing. He was basically isolated in his palace. This is in 1978, 79. There were enormous street protests every 40 days, because basically every 40 days they would have the funerals of the people who'd been killed in the last protests. More people, hundreds of thousands of people, by some estimates, millions, would come out onto the streets. Sometimes the Shah's police fired on them, sometimes they didn't. The Americans were actually encouraging the Shah's security forces to be more authoritarian, to be more ruthless, and the Shah hesitated. And then the Shah ended up fleeing in January 1979. I would say the Shah had lost a colossal amount of support. And the difference now is that I think there are still a large number of people who, they're heavily invested kind of politically and indeed economically in the regime. And the regime, though definitely weakened, is more stable, it's more ruthless, it's not concentrated just on one man as the Shah's was. So I would say the regime now is probably more embedded than the Shah's was at the end of the 70s. And it's not so dependent on the whims of a single dying man either, which was the big problem for the Shah.
It's so interesting to get your perspective as a historian on this. I always think the historians must be, I guess, ever frustrated with politicians for not learning lessons of history when they, conduct their foreign policy. So
I don't know about that, though. Historians are terrible judges. Historians are terrible judges of the... So basically everything I say is probably wrong, by the way. But anyway, continue.
I think even that admission probably, puts you ahead of quite a lot of politicians, perhaps. But how optimistic or not are you when you see, I guess, the attempt to bring about some kind of democracy in Iran?
I think these things often depend on the will of the regime, and the regimes fall when there's a split within the regime and a part of the security forces or something, or the army changes sides. And that hasn't happened so far. It's kind of slightly hard to see why it would happen, because so many people in the Iranian government, the Revolutionary Guard and whatnot, they're so economically entrenched in the Iranian system that they would stand to lose massively if the whole thing was torn down. So, they have shown that they are prepared to use extreme violence to sustain their rule. And I think as long as they're prepared to do that, it's hard to see it being, it's hard to see it being displaced. The other thing about the current Iranian regime is, it's something that I think we often forget in the West. Iran is not a standard dictatorship. So it does have elections, and there are arguments within the regime. So it's quite, I mean, it's not a regime I approve of, by the way, but it's quite a cunning system because it allows just sufficient latitude for people to argue and for there to be a modicum, a little modicum of dissent. But beyond that, is there going to be a huge upsurge of popular, enthusiasm that will sweep away the current system? I don't think so.
And thank you so much. You're someone that we've been very keen to get on the programme for a while, particularly me, because I'm such a super fan of the podcast.
I wasn't that bothered.
OK, fair. I wasn't bothered about seeing you either, to be honest. Sorry.
I love it. But no, it's been great to have you on. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Dominic.
Bye-bye.
Love it.
Right, we're going to continue discussing the latest situation in Iran. And joining us now is the human rights activist and journalist, Mahsa Ahmadinejad, who joins us from New York nice and early. Thank you so much for getting up early for us. Great to see you. My first question is, what is the latest by your assessment? I know you're more in touch than many of us with people there on the ground. What is the latest in terms of the strength and resilience of the regime?
It is beyond sad. To be honest, the first thing that I can mention right now is the frustration of Iranians not having access to internet. It is shocking that how the foreign minister of the Islamic Republic can enjoy the privilege of free internet and going to different media platforms. Recently at CBS, he was actually challenged by CBS that how come he can use Zoom and internet, spreading the lies around, but people inside Iran are living in a total darkness, absolute digital blackout. And this is very concerning. I am mourning for the death of civilians, but at the same time, I know that how Iranians are celebrating the killings of the killers, Ali Khamenei, and the reason that they're actually shutting down the internet, it's not for a security reason. They want to cover up their massacre first, and they want to hide what is going on inside Iran. And I really beg the international community, especially those who call themselves anti-war, this is a crime against humanity. This is a war crime that you put people in darkness during the war, no shelter, no siren, no warning. And I don't even know whether my family members are alive or not. Many other Iranians do not even have any information about the safety of their family. This is the situation right now in Iran. Very heartbreaking.
Indeed, and we thank you for sharing your perspective on it. You mentioned there was some celebration by Iranians at the death of the former supreme leader, for example. Gauge for us the scale of support for that action by the US and Israel, and whether the scale of support of it has changed or diminished at all as things have progressed, and clearly regime change has not yet arrived.
This is a war being imposed on us Iranians by the Islamic Republic. Let's be very clear, this war could have been avoided. The regime had many chances, but they didn't want to use it because creating chaos, mayhem, war in the region, in Iran, is in the DNA of the Islamic Republic. Yes, people inside Iran, they are fed up with this regime. That's why they took to the streets. That's why 6 major uprisings took place in my country, and people were demanding regime change. So regime change is not a foreign plot being imposed by a foreign government like the United States of America or the Israeli government. This is the demand of millions of Iranians. By saying that, yes, of course, people in my country, they celebrated the killing of Ali Khamenei because they believe that this is not tragedy. They're not mourning for those who ordered massacre 45 members of Revolutionary Guards. They were in charge of murdering people, raping women, and that's why they're celebrated. But I have to say that. But of course, people are concerned. They do not want to be left alone by a wounded regime by replacing Ali Khamenei with another Khamenei. So at the end, they're watching. They really need to see that the entire regime is gone. That's how people can have safety, security, dignity, and a decent life, a normal life. Under the Islamic Republic, this is impossible. So they're waiting for international community, for Europe, actually for the United Kingdom, to support them as well. Because we see people are telling me to send this message to you. We see at the same time, my people are facing massacre, facing, like the regime storming to hospital, going door by door, arresting doctors. At the same time, why the security forces were raping nurses for the crime of helping the wounded one. We see that, Prime Minister Stammer's Foreign Ministry office, they attended a party at the embassy of the Iranian regimes in London to celebrate the anniversary of the Revolutionary Guards. I think the editor-in-chief of the Sky News, your platform, were attending at that party as well, at the same time when my people were facing rape and massacre. So when the international community put everything on the shoulder of the United States of America, nothing gonna happen. This is the Berlin Wall moment for my country, and we want to see the Europe take actions as well, support the people of Iran, help them to access the internet.
I don't know which event or party you're referring to, but I can speak for
It was
certain...
February 12th. I know it very well. It's fact.
Either way,
February 12th.
I can speak for certainty that Sky News does not take any sides.
I want to just explain that there was an event, 12 February, the anniversary of the Islamic Revolution.
Well,
and
again,
the pictures are there that journalists and officials, including from your platform, shaking hands, and they actually responded. Your journalists responded saying that this was a normal event. The Islamic Republic is not a normal regime. They are like ISIS, and that was not a normal event. That broke the heart of millions of Iranians.
I can only speak for the fact that we absolutely take no sides on these things. I just wanted to finish quickly with your reflections on the Iranian women's football team and what happened there. Why do you think some of those Iranian footballers that had sought to stay in Australia then changed their position?
That's a very good question, because this is another thing that concerning many Iranians. Look, taking a hostage is in the DNA of this regime. They took my own brother hostage. So I have been in their shoes. The soccer players have family members inside Iran. And I have heard from many different sources that how the regime put pressure on their family members and ask them to either come back to Iran or having their family members being detained. This is the reality in Iran. Look, you can't just see soccer players asking for asylum, removing their compulsory veiling, enjoying moment of freedom, and suddenly they make decision to go back to dictatorship. That's not normal. So that is why I'm asking the international global athletes to join us and make awareness, because we are worried about the safety of these soccer players. That's why I'm asking Europe, the UK, officials to make, this case a serious, this is not normal. It breaks my heart that women were standing side by side by the Australian officials with big smile, with no compulsory veiling. And now when you see their pictures inside Iran, no smile, with forced hijab, and that's make a huge alarm for international community. I really want well-known athletes, well-known soccer players, well-known football players to support the women of Iran.
Thank you very much for joining us. Good to see you.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
We will be taking a quick break here. When we come back, we'll continue the discussion on Iran. Michael Clark up next.
Right, let's get the latest, shall we, in the conflict with Iran. We can talk to Michael Clark, our security and defence analyst. So what are your, I guess, kind of key takeaways where we're waking up this morning?
Key takeaways, I think, is that the war is getting beyond President Trump's control because he's now casting around for help on keeping the Strait of Hormuz open. The Iranians are setting the agenda by showing that they can allow some ships to pass but not others. So that's what they want. President Trump has said that they are desperate for a deal, and the Iranians said no. Abbas Arashi said, we're not talking to you. And there's no other evidence, apart from President Trump saying that they're talking to me about a deal. There's no other evidence that anyone's talking to him about a deal. So I think this is in his own imagination. And we're into a new phase of the war now because it's moving in quite different directions. So there are attacks now on American facilities in Iraq, not by the Iranians, but by Iraqi militias. And, of course, politically, we've got this problem of the United States now wanting its allies to pitch in and help keep the Strait of Hormuz open, which will be a major undertaking for any military if they do it. The Americans could do it on their own, just about. The allies with America could do it, but it's a big undertaking. It's not a quick thing.
To what extent is the regime weakened at this point, as a sort of snapshot update 2 weeks in?
No indication at the moment. The indications are the opposite, that the Basij, the militia, are out and about on motorbikes, and that they are shooting anybody and prepared to shoot anyone who appears or looks as if they are anything other than pro-regime. The police, anecdotally, I'm getting this anecdotally, the police are not on the streets at all. And that's important. So the Basij are now the police, who are the IRGC's local militia. There's about 600,000 of the Basij. There's 250,000 of the IRGC. So that's a pretty powerful force. And the police have vacated the streets. The army are doing nothing. And I think we talked about this before. One of the big questions, what does the Iranian army do? In 1979, when the Shah was deposed, the army sat on its hands when there was a big demonstration in favour of Ayatollah Khomeini coming back from Paris. In this case, the army is doing nothing. Now, that may turn out to be important or not.
How big's the army in numbers?
It's about 500, 600,000. I mean, by itself, the army is smaller than the IRGC and the Basij. But the IRGC and the Basij also include conscripts. About 50% of the army are conscripts. And that's one of the problems. They can't necessarily rely on their loyalty one way or another. About 30% of the IRGC are conscripts as well, but they're selected conscripts. People are conscripted, and if they look as if they've got the right ideological tone, they send them to the IRGC. So the IRGC is pretty solid. The Basij, less so, because they're amateurs, but they're murderous amateurs. The army are semi-professional with too many conscripts. So there's a lot of moving parts. But while the army sits on its hands and the police are not on the streets, you have to say the IRGC is in full control. And Khomeini, is in control as far as we know. The death of Khomeini and the creation of his son as the new Ayatollah, if anything, has deepened it. David Petraeus made the point. He said the Americans wanted a Venezuela-style revolution. They wanted a regime alteration. They wanted Delcy Rodriguez, and instead they've got Kim Jong-un.
Well, going well then. I was going to ask you specifically about the Strait of Hormuz, if I can, because obviously Donald Trump has asked the UK and other countries to send these warships. It feels like we're resisting that, but potentially looking into sending things that could, repel drones and look for mines. What do you think our involvement could be, and how dangerous might it be?
Not much. What we have is this mine countermeasure unit, which is only about 20-odd people. So it's not actually, and it's never been used before. I mean, the Navy only had it set up last year. It's not been into combat yet. So it's a series of things. There's a robot ship called the Ariadne. There is a sort of control ship, a mothership called the Atlas, and it's a swarm system. So it's a series of robots towing arrays which can detect mines, in some cases fool the mine into exploding, because some of these mines are very clever. I mean, some of these mines are designed to let some ships go over the top and then explode when something bigger comes along. So this is an anti-mine drone system which doesn't put people's lives at risk, but it's a relatively small unit. If we had 20 of these units, we might have a capability. We've got one, which has not yet been used, is not fully up and running, 20-odd people who are very dedicated to it, of course they are, but that's all we've got. And then we've got, of our own mine hunters, we've got a group of one deep-sea mine hunter, the HMS Bangor, and about 6 other Hunt-class mine hunters, most of which are not in the water. And we've only got 3 or 4 mine hunters available for use, and we need those for our independent nuclear deterrent. You know, why should a mine hunter be important for our independent? But it's vital, because when our bombers, when the submarines, with our nuclear submarines, when they leave Faslane, their base, they go down the Firth of Clyde and out through the North Channel, and the mine hunters are vital to keep those open, to make sure the Russians are not nosing around. And so as they come and go through the channel, then that's a much more important job for our mine hunters than anything we do in the Gulf.
Michael, we're out of time, so I'm going to end with a very unfair question that needs a long answer, but I'm going to force you to a short one. Are we closer to the start or the end of this war?
We're in the middle. So I think the American war, we're in the middle of the American phase of the war, but the fighting will go on after this, and the Strait of Hormuz will probably stay closed because I think the Iranians will survive, and they'll dictate terms thereafter, and America will have gone home and declared victory.
Michael, thanks for joining us. Pleasure as always. Well, as you can see, Jackie has joined us. We're going to ask the same question to Jackie as well.
Are we in the middle of the war or near the end of it?
Are we
closer
to knowing who's going to win the Premier League or not?
Yeah, I think we are. Yeah. I mean, a 9-point gap for Arsenal's pretty handy.
Very handy.
You're trying not to smile, aren't you? You're secretly inside, you're so excited.
Weirdly, I almost take the opposite. As we get closer, I think...
Get more nervous.
Get more nervous.
Yeah.
Don't celebrate.
Yeah. Anyway, it was a good weekend for Arsenal. It was a good weekend for teenage sports stars in general. We'll talk about Antonelli as well. And it was, I think, a pretty good day for Spurs. I mean, they've been suffering a lot, but I think yesterday was a good day.
We'll have the sport after this.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Welcome to the world.
Come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? This is the war game.
There were a number of armed security.
We want to discover, to find out what's really going on.
Everything you need to know about British politics in about 20 minutes.
I actually don't like political drama.
So, where next?
Available wherever you get your podcasts. Over there, to your left. There have been airstrikes every day. Hezbollah are very sensitive about us showing any pictures, and we're being hurried away right now. It felt akin to riding into some sort of Armageddon. Many other areas have been hit badly. There are shells coming in every few minutes. Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city, where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford, and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
It's trying to hit us. That's it. It got us then.
There's a lot of action going on. A lot of hits still. We were the first journalists and the only outsiders to reach the site of the attack several weeks after it happened.
We found from the missile.
It's very difficult to see what around here could be conceived of as a legitimate military target.
Only about half a mile from the Turkish coast, a boat seriously overcrowded.
This is one of the most severe viruses in the world. Clearly not had very much to eat at all, a lot of them extremely thin and very frail. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
The world's largest falls now down to a trickle in places.
I can't imagine how much plastic is lying at the bottom of this huge lake. Oh! Getting up close and personal with a rhino. This is what makes the job so fantastic. What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Welcome back. We're going to get the Premier League. I'm going to go to Jackie because Wilf's just getting, no one wants to hear from an Arsenal fan this morning when the night is clear at the top of the Premier League.
Hey.
I do think that's fair. We can just be happy.
Quietly, smug.
But there was a few big games, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing about yesterday was, everyone was looking to see if Spurs would get absolutely annihilated at Liverpool. I mean, they'd been really struggling. They've looked a bit sort of inept and without an idea. And Igor Tudor's been a disaster. Four defeats in 4, and it was his 5th game. And finally, they got a point. And it was, my goodness, there's a bit of fight. There's a bit of grit. You've really deserved that point at Liverpool. Interesting that we can have a look at the Richarlison goal. I mean, it's not a spectacular goal, but it's important in terms of what it meant. It happened in the 90th minute as well, which must have been extremely satisfying. The Spurs fans actually clapped the manager at the end of this match because I think they saw something, and that goal, that point, could have saved his job. I mean, we could be discussing this morning the fact that he's already been sacked, having been destroyed by Liverpool, but that wasn't the case yesterday, and there was something there that they can work with. They've got Forest at the weekend, which is really important because they're both fighting.
And it's interesting because I saw some Spurs fans calling off a protest that they had planned around that Forest game as well, which perhaps again shows that it's brought a little bit of goodwill with the result.
It definitely has. It definitely has brought some goodwill. I mean, not for Liverpool fans because they keep conceding very, very late on in matches, like 90-plus minutes, and that was in the 90th. And, they were on for 3 points there, and then suddenly you've dropped 2. So, I mean, their fans were pretty upset. It seems like nobody really wants the 4th Champions League spot, though, because Aston Villa, who've got that position, have not had a good 2026. It's been disappointing. I mean, yesterday was case in point, go to Old Trafford. Man United are on such a roll, right, though. I mean, it's like they can't do anything wrong at the moment. 3-1 it was. 2 United, 7 wins from 9 for Michael Carrick. How brilliantly has he done, but how brilliant was Bruno Fernandes yesterday? 2 assists. You got any assist stats that you've
only the same one I've already used.
But he's beaten...
How many am I meant to have each hour?
He's beaten David Beckham's Man United assist record.
There we go.
So there's another one. Really, really good. And I'm showing you this moment, even though it happened on Saturday, late on, because you'll like it, and it will make your day to see the Max Dowman goal again. Youngest scorer in Premier League history with this goal. He's 16. A few weeks ago, he was 15. And it was just glorious for Arsenal fans because it was a kind of moment of magic and also a piece of history in the Premier League. And look at Arsenal going absolutely nuts.
And everyone also highlighting how Wayne Rooney introduced himself, age 16, for Everton against Arsenal.
Against Arsenal, yeah. Yeah, that's right.
That's a good point.
But, I mean, what is Max Dowman doing this morning? Do you think he's in double chemistry or...?
It's amazing.
He's got to train for a big Champions League game on Wednesday night.
I'm trying to figure out how I get away with not handing in my English homework because I was a bit busy at the weekend.
He must cut a bit of slack on a Monday morning by his teachers.
I hope not.
You haven't finished your homework?
Grounded. Just get right back down to earth and get in there.
It's going to be the coolest kid in class this morning, though.
Definitely.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, there was a good impression of what it might look like walking in, swaggering.
Yeah.
Also, Kimi Antonelli, 19 years old, winning a Formula 1 Grand Prix for the first time for Mercedes. And you know what? Those Mercedes, I mean, they're dominating, but there still takes a lot of guts as a 19-year-old to nail it and start on pole and then finish in first. And Lewis Hamilton got on the podium for the first time in a Ferrari. So, I mean, good times ahead. Good times ahead for them. But, I mean, a lot of people not loving these changes to F1. But the war in Iran has cancelled Bahrain and also the Saudi Grand Prix. Gives them time to tweak.
We have time. Jackie, thanks so much. That does it for mornings. Up next, Sky News Today. Don't go anywhere.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.